Welcome to the Kicking Up Dust Media YouTube channel, guys. Today we've got a very special guest. He's from Mexico. He was a part of the Mexican cartel. And he's got a very crazy story. And I spoke to him initially about 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago, he was trying to, what I would say, escape the cartel because he turned Muslim and he wanted to turn a new leaf. It's a crazy story. When he was telling me on the phone, it was blowing my mind. And it shows Allah guides who He wills, no matter where you are. When you hear this story, it's going to absolutely have you in shock. Anyway, so let's get to it. I want to introduce Zach, who goes by the Muslim name now of Ali. Welcome to the show.
Salam, my brother.
Hi. How you doing, man?
I'm doing, alhamdulillah, I'm blessed, bro. Just being here.
I really want to start from the beginning. And it was a story that you told me what happened to you in prison. It's a very deep story. And we're definitely going to get to that. But I want to just know, because I don't know a lot about your early life.
Mm-hmm.
Just give us a rough idea of where you were born, how the neighborhood you grew up in and things like that.
So I was born originally in Mexico in a state called Guerrero. I was taken to the U.S. when I was like around a year and a half. Grew up in California. Lived for a while in South Central LA, and from there we moved to Inland Empire. Obviously, you're always dealing with gangs. It's just like racial, but it was more like a normal U.S. childhood. Where you just stick with your own kind.
What part of California was it?
LA County.
LA County.
Yeah, LA County and Inland Empire. That's Inland Empire is IE.
How far is that from, like, for example, South Central,
South Central LA?
LA, yeah.
LA County is from South Central to IE is probably like an hour drive, an hour and a half.
Because we're in the UK, we're quite familiar with LA because of the movies.
Exactly.
So a lot of them were based in South Central and stuff. So it's basically the same county.
Yeah, I was living in Martin Luther and Florence. That's basically in the Firestone region. That's South Central LA.
And LA is like ridden with gangs and crime
Yeah.
all throughout, generally black and Mexican, right?
Yeah.
And the neighborhood you grew up in, what kind of neighborhood was it?
It's a Florence gang. That's where I was originally, where I grew up until around like 11, 12 years. And we moved to the Inland Empire.
Is it a rough neighborhood?
Yeah, it's a rough neighborhood.
Like a gang neighborhood.
You're always getting into scuffles,
What is it predominantly, any particular race or?
Blacks and Mexicans are the ones that are the strongest gangs there.
Moving on towards school, because you guys have high school, is a bit different over here. Yeah. I don't really understand it. So just give us a little idea of school, what it was like. Were you actually learning anything in school? Because we've seen movies about the school system. Then it seems just absolutely messed up. Metal detectors at the doors and things like that.
Yeah.
So give us a understanding of it.
When we moved to the Inland Empire, obviously because you're coming from LA, you get into fights. You get into scuffles. Unfortunately, I got kicked out of middle school. The first year I was in middle school, I got kicked out and I got sent to a day center. And at the same time, in the day center, it was the same thing. It was a little bit worse because obviously you got all the problematic kids around in the school system. They all get put into that school. Didn't last 3 months there, and I got kicked out and I got sent to it's called Barbara Feltz County School in San Bernardino. And it was just like you said. You have to arrive, no backpack, no pencil, nothing. Just get yourself there. They do a metal detector on you, and you get yourself into a classroom, and you don't step out.
What did you get kicked out for?
I took a knife because I had got jumped.
Oh, sorry. So you were kicked out of school because how old were you?
I was like 13.
Wait, what's that movie? Michelle Pfeiffer.
Dangerous Minds.
Dangerous Minds. That's it.
Dangerous Minds.
Is it a bit like that?
Exactly like that.
Because that's when I think of schools in LA, that's what I think about, and whatever. So then you get searched and whatever. So you got jumped, so you took a knife to school.
Yeah, I took a knife, and obviously it's gang related. Everything's gang related.
Even in school.
Even in school.
And it's based upon race.
Yeah, definitely.
So the Mexicans are with the Mexicans, blacks with the blacks, and whites with the whites.
Yeah, but sometimes even like in school, I think I had more fights against other Mexican gangs than blacks. You respect them, they respect you. They don't really get involved with you. it was more against like envy with other cliques, with other gangs. You know.
I was from what I understand, a lot of the beefs in LA is within their own race.
Yeah.
A lot of
exactly.
a lot of the violence is within their own races. Just a quick question that I want to know. So the Mexicans, but what if you're from like El Salvador? What's the country called? Sorry?
Salvador?
Yeah, if you're from places like that, do they align with the Mexicans automatically?
No. There was back in that day. There was a green light on Salvatruchas or Maras. You know, MS-13. It's
That sounds mad.
yeah. It's a really huge gang that runs across from Southern America to
MS-13.
MS-13.
Yeah, I heard of it, yeah.
And if you were Mexican from a Mexican gang, a Sureño gang, that was when at the moment that you see one, that was green light. You have to go for him because they didn't like each other. That's how dangerous it was. And even with 18 streeters, you see 18 streeters and you just go at it. Even if you were accompanied by security or by police, you just go
18th Street is from El Salvador as well.
18 streeters from El Salvador too.
So yeah, okay. So they have the Latinos have their own internal politics going on and things like that. So I suppose now at this point you're 13 years old. You are not in school, so you've got a lot of idle time basically.
Yeah.
And it's a rough neighborhood, it's a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so obviously you become a target in a way for the elders and stuff like that. Yeah. Is that how it works? They kind of recruit from the younger guys.
I started hanging around with gangs. Started theft. You know, small crimes to try to get money. And I started kicking it with homeboys that would do home invasion, you know, auto theft, everything that has to do with
robbing, basically.
Anything, exactly, just to get by. So basically, you become a family with those mates, you know, and you see them die, and obviously there's wars, there's prices you have to pay for hanging around with supposedly your clique, you know, your gang. And obviously, they killed someone close to me. We went after them, and that's how we started getting involved with, like, obviously the.
It went backwards and forwards, basically.
Yeah.
And obviously, in America, it's gun crime. Really, you know, here's a lot of knives in the UK, but obviously both sides go backwards and forwards and stuff like that. So, at what point did you kind of like go like really deep into like drug dealing and prison and stuff like that?
I was never deep in drug dealing. I was more deep in theft and in gun crimes. You know?
Gun crime, yeah.
I've always said I was addicted to adrenaline, to the sound of a firearm. But it got to the point where obviously my mom didn't want me in the house anymore around 15, 16 because of the bad influence I was getting my brother and my two sisters. So she told me, she's like, you gotta choose a path, you know. And because I was still hurt because of what my mom had. I understand at the moment that she was under a lot of stress, and only Allah knows why things happen. But I couldn't blame her for what she had said, you know. So I decided to leave my family, and I was basically living with the homeboys, living in the park. Yeah, at 15. So it got to the point where obviously your life is at risk once they know that you're a player. You know that you're down to go for missions. Exactly. And a homeboy told me, he's like, you gotta choose a path because you're not gonna last here. Like, you see your homeboys, you see your friends, like, where are they? They're in prison or they're dead. And for a moment I was like, you know what? Well, why don't I just go back to Mexico and start a new life? Because I didn't know anything about Mexico at that point, you know. But in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna get away from this violence, and I'm gonna go down to Mexico,
to a
better place, supposedly. At the moment, I had that. So yeah, like around 16, I went to my mom and knocked on the door, and I asked her I need my birth certificate because I'm heading back to Mexico. And she's like, "Are you sure that that's what you want?" And at the moment, like I said, I was hurt with my mom because of everything, and I didn't really find myself mentally stable back in California. And obviously, with everything going on, and everybody knows that once you're in the gang, eventually you're gonna get caught up in prison.
Prison, of course. So
I decided to leave Mexico at the age of 16, turning 17, and I went to Mexico, thinking that I was gonna change my lifestyle without knowing that in reality I didn't know what violence was.
It's the worst place.
Yeah, exactly. So I was moving from gang related environment where you have drive-bys, you got gang banging, to a deeper, more cynical place, you know.
And when you moved back, you went to Mexico. Sorry, did you go to where your family was originally from? What part did you go to?
I first went back to where I was born, Guerrero.
Okay.
And basically, that's a mountainous region. No
What
government.
part of Mexico? Just to give us an idea.
It's just south of Mexico City.
Oh, just south of
Yeah,
Mexico
it's like
City.
3 hours away from Mexico City.
Okay.
So I went there, and obviously, like, there's no money, you know. So inside of me, I was seeing that there's money if you go work for the cartels, picking, you know, amapola. You guys call it pop, the heroin. You know,
what do they call it there?
Amapola.
Amapola.
Amapola is the ball,
The
poppy,
plant.
the poppy plant, and obviously marijuana.
Do they actually grow the poppy in Mexico, right? Okay, I didn't realize that.
That's one of their main
drugs they grow.
Drugs that they grow in Mexico.
So when you were there, 16, who were you living with in Mexico?
I was living with one of my aunts.
And obviously, you had no intention of getting involved in crime. Obviously, you just wanted a cleaner life.
Yeah, cleaner life. But at the same time, because there was no job opportunities.
How were you surviving financially?
You survive out of what the nature gives you. In that mountainous region, there's a lot of fishing. There's a lot of hunting. So obviously, I learned how to hunt. I learned how to fish, and it was more like whatever you would grow in your fields. If that was corn, if that was pumpkin, that's what you would survive with.
Yeah.
So there was very little job opportunities. At this moment, like I was telling my aunt, you know what, I'm gonna try to get closer to Mexico City and find a better environment so I can get a job. And obviously, I moved from Guerrero. I went to a place called Morelos. It's to the south of Mexico, like an hour away, because my mom's family is from there. So my mom is from a different state than from my dad. And yeah, it was a totally different environment. There was a lot of jobs, but very low paying jobs, you know. And it got to me where like I was working from Monday to Saturday, from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, and probably getting 150 pounds a week.
Oh, wow. So you actually did get a job at 16, 17 years old?
You don't have to show any papers back then.
So I mean, like, you kind of really wanted to live like good, you know? Like you really wanted to get away from the crime, so you were sincere about it.
Exactly.
And like, so how much were you getting paid?
150 pounds a week.
In English? Or
English money.
And working every day?
Every day from 6 to 6.
You know what?
Construction. Yeah. But the problem was that, like, you in Mexico, in the States, and even in prison, everything is run out of respect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And in the general population or in society in Mexico, they disrespect you, and they try to, if you're there in a higher place, they'll try to humiliate you, they'll try to put you down, you know.
Okay.
So
a class system sort of.
Exactly. So I was getting tired of that, because obviously I knew the person I was.
You lived in America.
Yeah. And I was getting tired of that environment of always having to deal with people that would try to put you down, and knowing the type of person I was, you know. When I was here in Morelos, I met this homeboy from Border Brothers from San Diego.
Sorry, what's the Border Brothers?
It's a gang.
Oh, it's another gang.
It's a gang.
Mexican gang?
No, it's called Border Brothers because they operate in San Diego and TJ.
Okay, Tijuana.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're on both sides of the border. That's
exactly. That's why they're called Border Brothers.
Yeah.
They're basically Sureños as well, you know. So when he saw me and he met me, we became really good friends, because obviously, growing up by yourself, not having any people around you that understand your culture, because it's a different culture change when you come from the States, growing up as a Chicano, and going back to the South and growing up as a Mexican and living like a Mexican, you know. And obviously meeting this homeboy, he showed me a lot of love, you know. At the moment, he was in the game. He was selling, obviously, drugs. He was a drug dealer, but he showed me a lot of loyalty, you know. And he would show me a lot of things of like how things would work in Mexico, and he would tell me like, why are you still working as a what do you call him here, mason? Is that what you call him? The people that build?
A builder, yeah.
Yeah,
builder, yeah.
Yeah, builder. It's like, why are you working there? Why don't you jump into into a cartel. I can get you in. I can get you into the cartel. At the moment, I was like, you know what? I'm good, man. Like I'm just trying to.
You're like you're a kid at this time, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I had already lived through a lot of violence, and I was just kind of tired of it, you know. At the same time, I was trying to get back to the States because a lot of people that come from the U.S. and they go to the States, and from the States and they go to Mexico, they don't last a year, 2 years, and they got to go back because they can't
hack the culture.
Exactly, because everything is really different to what a first world country can offer you to what a third world country is going to give you.
Is Mexico actually classed as a third world country?
Yeah, Mexico is classed as a third world country. And by this time, it was like he was convincing me, you know. It's like, man, I should just leave my job because obviously I would deal with a lot of things, and at the same time I would struggle with myself and not losing control of me, you know. If someone, back in the day when I was younger, if someone disrespects you, you handle it straight away. No matter if he's bigger, no matter if he's...
That's how you grew up.
Yeah, because that's how basically Chicanos grow up, is that you have to fight, or else you don't get any respect.
You don't get no respect.
Exactly.
You're a victim.
Exactly.
Simple. Yeah.
And it got to a point where he was. I started helping him out with small things. By this time, I told him, you know what, I don't like the drug dealing.
Cocaine, they were holding?
Cocaine, crystal meth, heroin, marijuana.
Okay. Because just for the viewers, Tijuana, because it's so close to the border, is a major smuggling route, right?
Yeah.
And they have their own cartels there, though.
Yeah.
Which cartel actually controls Tijuana?
Tijuana right now it's divided in three parts. You got the Arellano Felix, you got the Cartel de Sinaloa, and the Cartel de Jalisco.
That was the territory that El Chapo was having the war over, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to root or something.
No, Chapo, a lot of people don't understand. Chapo is basically the right hand of El Mayo Zambada. And he hasn't been caught. He hasn't stepped prison. He's probably going to die without never stepping in
But
prison.
they're looking for him, though.
Yeah.
And they can't find him.
No, they haven't found him.
That's the first time I ever heard that name.
Yeah, Mayo Zambada, you should research it.
Mayo
Zambada.
Zambada.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mayo Zambada had control of the cartel, the whole cartel of Sinaloa. It included all the way down to Colombia, you know.
Okay.
So all that drug trade was in his control, and at the moment, the Arellano Felix were working with him. So Chapo wanted obviously a piece of TJ because he had an idea of making tunnels underneath TJ. Cartel de Los Arellano Felix were basically moving drugs with what do you call these, lorries or these trailers? These
lorries. We call them,
lorries. That was their game. They had obviously bribed Border Patrol, and they had agents that would cross their merchandise. And Chapo had an easier way of just putting it underneath the ground. But they got into conflict, and they broke up back in the early 2000s.
Okay, they went to war with each other, right?
They went to war with each other. And when I had recently got into Mexico, it was back in 2010. So the cartel of Sinaloa was breaking up. It had its own internal wars in the north, in the border, and in the south, towards the route of Acapulco, towards the route of Guatemala. And I got involved in that time when everything was breaking up. So
just to stop 1 minute, yeah. This sounds mad. You know, like here is just so different to over there. Because someone was saying Mexico, like we have gangs here, they have armies.
Yeah, that's
like, just so different over there. It's like when you're hearing this stuff, it's like it's a different planet. Yeah, but you see this stuff, you know, when they went to, it's on the YouTube. Just to cut you. I was watching a video. They went to arrest El Chapo's son one day, and they got him. And then his army, El Chapo's son's army, came out, and they had to let him go on camera. They handcuffed him and let him go, right? Yeah,
so Mayo Zambada gave the order for the Sinaloa cartel to go and stop it because it wasn't the DEA. The DEA was did the operation without the Mexican government's permission. You understand?
Okay.
So that's why the Mexican president said, you know what, you got to let him go because at the time there's a big geopolitical movement where the Mexican government is no longer working with the U.S. government, and it's not helping them out in any way. So by this time, obviously my brother's like, you know what, think about it if you wanna jump into the
This is going back now to when you were 17.
to when I was with my carnal. And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm good with guns, you know. I've always been really handy with weapons, and I've always considered myself a person that is not afraid, you know. I'm not a coward." And I told him, "You know what? I want to get into the sicario, and the sicariato we call it. It's called basically mercenary."
Yeah, I know.
So he's like, "Well, yeah, let me get in contact with some people, and they'll call you up." By this time, obviously, I didn't have anything, you know. I didn't have nothing.
Completely broke.
Completely broke. Didn't even have a house where to stay, bro. I didn't have any communications with my mom, with nobody, you know. I was by myself, and the reason why I got pushed to that was because I called my mom's, and I was like, I spoke to my brother, and I told him like, "Hey, it's really hard down here, man. Like, I want to get back to the States. I don't want to stay here." And
oh, sorry, you wasn't actually American citizen.
No.
Oh snap! So when you've gone to Mexico, you've given up your American.
Yeah. I was illegally in the
US.
US.
But you were still in you were still in the US though. But now you got to smuggle yourself back in.
Exactly.
Oh, that's deep.
So,
that's a bad move, bro.
At the end of the day, it's not because
everything leads to somewhere else. Yeah, of course.
So I called my brother and I told him, "You know what? I don't want to be here no more, bro. It's dangerous. The homeboys are getting killed because obviously Chicanos go to Mexico and they start their own clicas. They think that it's like in the U.S. And then here comes the cartel, picks them up, slices them, gone. You know.
And they some brutal. They chop your heads off and
it's not
all type of stuff, man.
Like it's very
brutal. That's the right word to use.
So I called my brother and he's like, "You know what? You think that money grows in trees over here or what?" You know, he basically gave me his back. And I remember I hanged up the call and immediately called my brother. I'm like, "You know what? Just tell him I want in." I was like, "Tell him I want in." At the same time, I knew that this was a suicidal movement, because once you're into the game, you only got two ways: you die or you go to prison. You know, and you see every day how many people get killed. In the state of Morelos, you would have approximately in 1 month you get probably like 60, 70 people killed in 1 month. In a week, you can get 20, 30 people killed.
Mexico is one of the worst murder rates in the world.
Like, you can't imagine. And like you're saying, it's not gangs anymore. It's entire armies, you know? So when I made this decision, they called me up and they're like, "So what's up with you?" Like, you know, they wanted to basically understand what did I want, how did I want to work? And I'm like, "Well, you give me equipment and I'll show you what I can do." They're like, "Yeah, go ahead." They gave me an appointment where to pick up this car, open the car, in the back, 2 rifles, 2 Uzis, 2 handguns, and a bag full of munitions, you know. And they tell me where to go, they tell me who to pick up, and I start working. I've always been a person that has never been inclined to get high.
Okay.
I know that if you get high and you're in the game, you don't last a minute.
Caught slipping.
Yeah, you're gonna get caught. So I would always work with intelligence, you know, try not to get caught, not to get caught up. The first year that passed, obviously, my credentials were growing because they would ask me like, "Damn, this guy has balls, you know. He's doing everything and he's not backing out."
You're basically putting in work for the cartel.
Exactly. The year passed. I'm coming down from where I was working, and I wanted to go chill with my carnal. I call him up and I ask him like, "Hey, can I go chill with you?" He's like, "Nah, man, things are hot down here. Like, you should just chill and go somewhere else." I call him again. Like, "Hey, can I chill with you?" And he's like, "Nah." He's like, "Don't come around here because there's a lot of government." I call him a third time right when I was passing through the city where he was at, and he's like, "What did I tell you, homeboy? Like, don't come down here." I get to the place where I was gonna get to, and I get a call from his number, and his wife starts yelling at me and crying, like, "They murdered Niñote. They murdered him." And at the moment I could hear my brother gasping for air, you know.
Oh, what? So you're on the phone while he's been hit?
Yeah, well, while he was on the ground hit, and it was like, at the moment I was shocked, because I was like, why did they go after him if he's just a drug dealer? He's no he's not an important piece for the cartel. Like, why would they kill him? You know?
Was this the guy that brought you in initially? The
Yeah.
one that the Border Bros.
Yeah, the Border Brothers.
Okay.
I head back to the city where he was
You
murdered.
were hit by the cartel or the government?
The cartel.
Okay.
I get to the city. I call up his the person that was in charge of him, and I tell him what's going on. You know, in a very serious tone of voice because I was upset. That was my brother. You know, and he basically shrugs it off. He's like, "Oh no, don't worry. Just get someone else to replace him. Like if he was trash, bro." And I was like you don't understand. Like this is my man. This is my brother. We have loyalty between us. Like, what do you mean just get another person? Like, we need to get the people that did this to him. I saw then and there that the cartels, the ranks of going towards the cartels, they're not worrying about you.
Of course.
You're just a pawn, you know. It's just like you're just a little soldier that they can be replaced by someone else. I find out that they went looking for me, thinking that because I was always with my brother, they thought that I lived with him, and they asked him for me. And he's like, even if I knew, I'm not going to tell you guys where he's at. And they blast him. I remember when it was his funeral. Like the homeboy, there was a lot of crowd around him because obviously he was a drug dealer, and when you're doing good, you got a lot of crowd around you, you know. And when I went to his funeral, the sad part was that I was the only one there with another a youngster that was helping him out, a 13-year-old. And he kept crying, and he asked me, he's like, "Where's everybody? You know, where's everybody at? Where's all those homeboys that were saying that they were down, that they were loyal? Where are they at?" And I looked at him and like sad of seeing what the reality of that game is. You know, of at the end of the day, no one's there in
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares in reality.
Nobody
They're just there to gain something, take advantage of the situation. And I told him like this, so you could see who's with you and who's not. You know, and while I was seeing him in his coffin, you know, they have a tradition in Mexico that while they're how do you say it? While the body is there and everybody's mourning him.
Okay.
How do you say it?
How they call it? You know, the body's laying. What they do? It's a Christian thing, I think.
Yeah, it's
right?
a Christian thing.
I don't know the name.
They're mourning it.
You know, the body's on display.
In the morning, yeah.
Yeah, mourning, right?
The body's on display.
Yeah,
People go and visit. See they do that in some.
It's called mourning, right?
yeah. It's just a period of mourning, yeah. When they have the coffin open and
when that coffin,
exactly.
you can go and see.
We don't really do that.
And like pay your respects.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So they have a tradition of putting a cross underneath the casket, a sand cross. So you have to grab some sand and make the cross. And while I was seeing him, you know, I remembered a lot of things that he had told me because he was a straight up G, you know, an OG, bro. Like those type of men that cry in front of you and they cry because of their problems, not because they're cowards, but because of the type of life that they're living, you know.
Yeah.
And he would always tell me, he's like, you know what? He's like, I like you, homie. You're a good homeboy. He's like, whatever happens to me, like take care of my kids. He had two younger kids. And I was like, what are you talking about, bro? You're a drug dealer. I'm a sicario. I'm more in danger of getting killed than you are. And he gets taken away, you know. And at the moment, I was filled with anger, and I just told him in front of his casket, I was like, you know what, homeboy, I'm gonna get you back. I got you, homeboy. Cost me what it's gonna cost me. I'm gonna get those people because they killed you in a very cowardly way.
So they run up in his.
They got him outside his house. And they basically pulled the window and they asked him like, hey, where's Smiley? Because they used to call him Smiley. Like, where's Smiley?
Your name was Smiley?
Yeah, my nickname was Smiley. And he's like, I don't know. And even if I did know, I'm not going to tell you. He was carrying his 2-year-old kid in his arms. And he gave him his back and they blasted him. You know? At this point, like, obviously I knew where the hit was coming from. And the people that were in charge of that area, they're like, no, you don't got no permission to go do anything or to deal with that. You have to stick to where we're sending you.
Doing, yeah.
So I'm still working over that. At the same time, I got people over here trying to investigate everything. I get sent to a party to obviously handle someone. And at that party, this guy pulls up on me and he's like, can I tell you something? I was like, I don't even know you, homeboy. He's like, I got this certain what do you call it? He's like, I'm a fortune teller. He's like, in 3 months you're gonna die. Something's gonna happen to you, and you're gonna die, right? And I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in that, you know. And he tells me, I had a friend with this girl, and I told him the same thing, and I told him that he was gonna end up locked up, and that the girl was gonna end up in a very dark place. He's like, and a week later, he kills his girl. He wraps around a belt in her neck and he chokes her out, and he tries to hide her in a wooden coffin. And his own mother turned him into the government, right? I was like, yeah, whatever. I thought it was. I just brushed it off, you know. 2 weeks later, I get caught up with guns and all this. By this time, we had already dealt with some of the people that were involved in the killing of my brother, and I get sent to prison. And obviously, like, you know that if you're going for just weapons, you just pay a fine and you're out.
Yeah. How old are you now?
I was hitting 20s by this time.
So now you've been in Mexico for 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I get to the prison and they're like, yeah, you just sign right here. You're gonna go right now. And I sign and everything. We get to the court and they're like, you guys are getting charged with homicide in first degree, and you guys are getting processed. And I'm like, I turn around and look at my lawyer, and it's like, that's what they're giving you guys? I'm like, well, with what or what? He's like, they have a protective witness that is testifying that you and these other two people killed this person.
Okay.
That's how corrupt the government was. So just in order for them to show that they're putting in work, if they catch you with anything that links you into the cartel, they'll build
blow out proportion, basically.
Yeah, and they'll build something to get you there. If you were just there for possession of firearms, now you're there for homicide. You know? Going to prison. Obviously, I was working for the cartel that was controlling that prison, so I had a smooth. They received me with respect and everything.
So, what part of Mexico is a prison?
Morelos, in that same state. When I get into this prison, I meet this person that killed this girl, right?
Oh, so the one that the fortune told you about, you actually met the guy in prison.
So I was with him. He was smoking a blunt, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, why do they call you the girlfriend killer? Because his nickname was Matanovias, girlfriend killer. And I remembered in my head, I asked him, I'm like, hey,
Can't be.
did this person, I give him the, like, how he looked. I'm like, did he tell you this and this and this? That person, he dropped his marijuana blunt, and he sat down and he had chills. He's like, I've never told anybody what this guy told me. And he changed colors, and he's like, what did he tell you? And I'm like, he told me that this and this was going to happen to me. He's like, man, be careful, you know? And I was like, I was starting to get like, you know, like, what is this?
What is this? Yeah.
By this time, I start making my calendar, you know, to the date that he had told me, or to the time.
Oh, so he told you can die in 3 months.
Yeah.
So you made a calendar to the day
you
should die.
Yeah, and nothing happened. But in that month where he said that something was going to happen to me, I remember I was working for the cartel inside of prison. So inside of prison, I was still working. I was still putting in work, and I had privileges and all this. I would go into my cell. So I lay back and I'm like, everything's good. I'm gonna be fine. And I fall into this deep dream, bro, where I see myself out in the street, but at the same time I see myself get shot in the face and then in my arm, and I'm dying in the street. You know, something pulls me into the ground, and I'm underneath the ground, but underneath the tree roots. You know, the roots of a tree. And I turn around and I hear this evil voice, you know, these red eyes just speaking to me. Like, what is it that you want? And I responded, I want power, I want my freedom, you know? And it asked me, it's like, what are you willing to do for it? I'm like, whatever is necessary. I ain't afraid of anything. And he's like, all right, I'm going to give you what you want. When I turn around, I see some ladders, right, going up these tree roots. And I start walking them. And I start seeing images of Baphomet, the Holy Death, something that in Mexico is very popular. a bunch of different saints and demons at the same time, and he's like, I'm the one that gives them their power, like that. I wake up and I'm like, man, that was some crazy dream. I try to get up, bro. I swear by Allah, brother, my arm where I got shot, I couldn't move it. The half of my face where I had got shot, I felt it numb, and I was freaking out. I was like, wait, what kind of magic is this, you know?
Like shaitan, bro.
Obviously, at that moment, I was more of an atheist than anything, because I had grown up as a Christian, but always questioning everything that has to do with Christianity. And inside prison, the Holy Death is the main character that everybody worships. You know,
What do they call it?
Holy Death.
Oh.
It's basically the angel of death.
Oh, is that the picture? Can I see it?
Yeah.
That is. So you actually tattooed that on your arm?
So that's what I'm getting to. It got to the point where obviously everybody that came and helped me out were believers of the Holy Death. You know.
That's a thing in Mexico.
Yeah. And because of the same reason that I wasn't arrogant, you know, because I had good homeboys, OGs that gave me good advice. Stay humble, you know. Don't feel that you're better than anybody else, because you turn around and that person that you humiliated is gonna stab you through. It's gonna take your life. And I started believing in it because obviously I started seeing the power that I was getting in prison. Ended up in this small district prison of like 400 people. The cartel, the people that were in charge of the prison gang that was working with the cartel, they basically betrayed the cartel outside, right? And they switched to a different cartel. So now they're asking us, are you with us or are you with them? I'm with no one, because I'm still in here facing up to 30 years of prison. I haven't seen any progress in my case.
So how long at this point? How long have you been in there?
A year and a half.
Oh, so in the UK, if you're on remand, your case is usually done it within a year.
Within a year.
Maybe tops 18 months. So now you've not even started, basically.
Yeah, no.
And while you were there, just to clarify, while you were there, the cartels split.
Yeah, the cartel split.
Okay, so you don't even know which side you're on now.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I was like, you know what, I'm with no one, because at the end of the day, I'm putting in work for this side, and I ain't seeing any benefits from it. Obviously, they had appointed a lawyer to me, and they're like, don't worry, we're gonna get you out, because we need you outside, because obviously I was a good soldier, and I was like, well, I want to see it. I'm tired of being here. Mexican prison is nothing like the state prison, bro.
Would you say it's worse?
The state prison is five-star hotel compared to Mexico.
So we say the prisons in the UK are 5-star compared to America. They're 5-star here. So you're saying they're even worse than American prisons?
Yeah, and there's homeboys that have been in the prison system in the US. They get to Mexico and they're like, bro, this is a whole different ballgame. Like over there, you're in a swimming pool. Over here, you're in the sea with a bunch of sharks.
You see the prison that you were in, because obviously it's cartel controlled, right? So does that mean there's less violence? Is more controlled? Like
no, there is more violence. So the cartel that has control of that prison. Let's say you arrive with drug possession.
Okay.
The custodians the custodians or the guards, they're not there to protect you. The cartel will get people in to where you're located. The guard will open the door. 3-4 people walk in with the smartphone. They would videotape you. They're gonna interrogate you. They're gonna smack you, and they're gonna beat you until they get what they want.
Just to find out.
They're gonna exactly. They're gonna send that information outside to verify with the people outside if is this person a rival, or who is he? Who is he working for? So it's basically you grab information from prison, because everybody, if you're a kidnapper, if you're a sicario, whatever you are, you fall in prison. The people that are controlling the prison, they're gonna go visit you that same night that you arrive there. Don't think that the guards are gonna keep you safe from the prison, from the inmates inside. No, the inmates.
Okay.
Yeah, because the inmates basically, if the prison director does not work with the cartel, they get murdered outside, bro. They get murdered. So a lot of CEOs and directors, they're they don't have any other choice but to
work with them.
but to work with the cartels. And inside the cartel, inside the prison, you have everything from prostitution, extortion. You got heroin, you got marijuana, you got cocaine. Like a normal store outside.
So the wars between the cartel continue in prison.
In prison, exactly.
And they're looking for who's from a different cartel, and they end up dealing with them.
Yeah, and the reason why I think I stood from the rest was, at the end of the day, like, I knew I didn't have family. I didn't have anybody that visits you. So in Mexico, the only way that you survive is if you have visit. In the States, you go into prison, they give you your shoes, your clothes. They give you certain things that are necessary for you to survive in prison, for you to have hygiene. Mexico, they only make sure to give you 3 times meal and water. Clothes, soap, deodorant is up to your family, or in order for someone else to lend you, and then you have to pay back, or you have to work inside of prison. They don't give you anything, bro. You know?
And I suppose if you're not high ranking, it's 20 man per cell, 30 people in the cell and stuff like that.
Exactly. And you have to be basically a janitor for the whole prison. You have to serve 6 months of being a janitor, of cleaning the bathrooms, of sticking your hand into feces, making sure that the prison is clean. You know, when I arrived as a high-ranking cartel member because I was already working as a sicario, and I had already worked my way up to sicario boss. You know, like I had my own group.
Your little clique that you send out.
Yeah. So obviously I didn't get to experience what that was. At the same time, I knew that keeping myself humble was going to those rivals that they had in that program. So let's say you're a rival, you arrive in prison, they're gonna be on your case 24/7. So you're gonna be as a janitor 24/7, and the people that manage the janitors are the cartel, not the CEOs. So the cartel will ask you, you're a rival, you want to get out of the janitor system of cleaning, give us 20,000, give us 30,000, or else we're gonna keep you in here and we're gonna beat you up every time we can, extortioning them, you know. So I would go and talk to these rivals and basically see what was going on, you know, and they would tell me, like, we were looking for you outside, you know, if we would have found you, we would have killed you, this and that. I was like, well, that's good, homie. I was outside ready to kill you as well, you know, but now we're here. Where's your Where's your cartel? Where are your bosses?
Okay.
You know,
so the prison was more controlled by your cartel.
Yeah, and I would tell them, like, where are those people that you fly your flag around and you say you die for? Where are they, homie? They ain't here. And that would show them, you know, like, how do you say, not like I would show them that I would treat them the same, you know. Yeah, okay. I knew I didn't have anything, and I knew they didn't have anything. Yes. So I would share whatever little.
So you never took advantage of the situation. Yeah. You kind of like, okay,
yeah, because I would explain to them, you know, at the end of the day, we're in here by ourselves.
We're workers for them. Like, they don't care about us.
So once they split it, I decided to just lay back. You know, I said I'm going to lay back. I don't want to get involved because obviously when someone betrays the cartel, you get consequences. These people started getting their family members started getting killed. Their girlfriends would come. They would go out. They would get disappeared. They would appear murdered, and they started getting paranoid. And they started looking at us, the ones that didn't jump to the same boat that they were in, you know. And they started saying, "Oh, you guys are the ones that are passing information outside, this and that," you know. I knew I wasn't doing anything. I was like, "Bro, I'm just looking after myself. I don't care about what you guys have going on." They ended up really messing us up, you know, like physically. They kicked our ass, you know.
The cartel,
yeah, the cartel that was in charge. They kicked our ass
because you were staying neutral.
Yeah, because we were staying neutral.
Can you say your cartel's name? Or?
It's called the Cartel de los Rojos. They were working for the Beltran Leiva.
Okay, so because they've split up now and you're in prison, you want to stay neutral, but to save yourself, what if you sided with the stronger part that was in prison? Would that have caused problems?
Yeah.
More problems for you? Yeah,
that would cause more problems because I still had people outside that were running with that cartel that I had. So it was like putting them in jeopardy.
Yeah.
You know? When this happens and we get obviously dealt with, I speak to another comrade of mine. And we're killers, bro. You know, when you're a killer, you're not a drug dealer, you're a killer. You know what your business is, and as a killer, you want respect from those people that are not killers or that are not in that same level of mindset, you know. And I was speaking to him, and I was telling him like, hey, like, why are we allowing them to step on us like this? You know, if I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go die. I want to go dying, bro, because I'm a warrior. I ain't no punk. So we started planning this riot because obviously we didn't want to leave things like they were, you know. We get sent back into the general population, and we get put into this janitor system that they had with the rivals. Now we're their rivals, so they put us into the janitor system, and they start pushing us down to the point where they would make you clean the bathrooms with this little piece of sandpaper, like square little piece of sandpaper, and pure Clorox. You would grab it, and you would have to clean where the crap was on the toilet seats, and your fingers would bust because of that, because of the bleach. Exactly, because of the bleach. They would bust, and they would just make you, try to humiliate you. And it got to the point where I had a lot of respect from a lot of people inside of prison. People that weren't even with the cartel. I had a lot of homeboys. Like an example, I had this homeboy. His name was Scrappy. He was from Southside Locals from Washington. And he was like, I'm not involved in that cartel stuff, so just keep me out of it, you know? Because obviously we speak English, so the people that speak English that are Chicanos, that are in prison, they try to like help each other out because they know that they got the same flecha or the same type of...
What are they in prison for in Mexico?
Everything, bro, like murder, kidnapping.
So they come from America to put in work and...
No, they sometimes just get drunk, kill someone.
Okay, in a nightclub or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So most of them didn't belong to the cartel, and I was kind of like split it because I was a Chicano in the cartels, and I was basically, I had respect from the rest of the Chicanos, but they're like your problems are different. They don't involve us, but because of the same reason that I stayed humble in prison. You know, a lot of people were like, if you want to do something, we're with you. You know, we're with you. And I told the carnal, I'm like, you know what, homeboy. Like, we're gonna pop this. We're gonna make this thing pop because I ain't about to stay here and let them step on me like this. Things pop off. Like those people that have been in prison, you know, and know about riots. Yeah. It's like if you're watching a camera just go while everything's going on.
South American riots are different type of riots, man.
They end up with casualties. We end up kicking them out of the prison and the people that were in charge. But at the same time, we get pointed out for the people that had created this whole mess. Okay. But we didn't get punished that much because they knew that we weren't fighting for the cartel. Because I no longer was belonging to the cartel. I was fighting for the general people that were tired of these people beating you, extortioning you, taking basically not letting you live in peace. And a lot of times, prison in Mexico, they forget that if you have the opportunity to make money, to get a hold of power, is to help the people around you. It's not to think that you're better. 100%. Because at the end of the day, the people around you, the general population, is going to get sick of you and tired of you, and they're going to get up and of course they're going to deal with you. So I get signaled out. I get transferred to a different prison. A state prison. 3-4 hours away, bro. I didn't know anybody.
What's worse in Mexico, state prison or federal prison?
State prison. Federal prison is controlled by the government, so there's not a lot of crime. State prison is like if you're in a mini city. So I was going to a state prison where in the old prison I was in was only 400 inmates. In the new prison it was 1,200 inmates, bro. The crazy part was
So what was going on with your case at this time? It's just on hold?
It was on hold because I put in, it's called an amparo. So basically the lawyer that the cartel had assigned me, he was double-crossing the cartel. Because what he wanted to do was he wanted to make sure that every person that was coming in from their cartel would get sentenced to life in prison. Maximum. The maximum years that was
he's working with the other cartel.
Exactly. Oh. So I'm looking at this and I'm telling the rest of the people that were with me, I'm like, I ain't stupid, man. Like, I know how prison system works. If you don't got any proof to break their testimony that you killed them, you ain't going anywhere. he just needs to signal you in front of the judges, and you're gonna get sentenced.
So at this time, you've been there what 2-3 years, mate?
A year and a half.
Year and a half.
Because the riot happened like in 3 months.
Okay.
I get sent to state prison. You know, in my mind, I was like what's like I don't know anybody down here. Nobody knows me. It's a state prison. It's not like where I was at.
Yeah.
So I was worried at the same time. We spent 6 months in isolation, you know. By this time, I was a believer of the Holy Death. I was carrying my amulet. I already had my tattoos and everything of what I represented. And when they take me out and they put me into the classification system where they classify you, I was in a cell with 20-some people sleeping, standing up. So you basically had to tie yourself to the cell and just try to sleep next to the other person because that's how.
Wow.
It was disgusting.
Overcrowded.
Like there was people that were sleeping on top of the toilet. They would sleep on the toilet like this, and it was just crazy, bro. Alhamdulillah, I only spent there 1 day. The next day, this paisano comes up. Paisa is basically someone that's from where you were born.
Okay.
He comes up and he's like, "Who's Smiley?" And I get up all scared. I'm like, "Damn, they're gonna get me for what happened back in the other prison." And I get up and I'm like, "I'm Smiley." He's like, "So you're from over there, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Get your stuff." I'm like, "Okay." I got my stuff and he calls the CEO like if the CEO worked for him. "Hey, you come here, open this gate." He opens the cell. He's like, "Come here," and he walks me into his cell. He slept there by himself. Giant TV,
He's the boss.
Giant. Yeah, he had everything, bro.
Yeah.
Like they called in from the prison where you were at, and they told me what happened.
Oh, so they've phoned up already. Okay.
Yeah, and they're like, and the people that phoned up were people that have time. You know, people that are there that have been there 10, 20, 30 years. They're considered OGs. You know.
Is this individual cartel or?
No. They're just inmates that have gangsters that are inside the prison. So they knew what had happened, and they basically put in word for me for someone in that state prison to look out for me. So he comes up, he's like, "Now you're gonna work for me." He's like, "You're gonna be my bodyguard," and he pulls out a shank and he gives it to me. He's like, I cook the crack in the whole penitentiary," and he starts explaining to me how everything works. Now he cooked crack cocaine. For those who know how crack cocaine is made, you know, it's like for every ounce he cooked in prison. For every section, there was 12 main sections in that state prison.
Yeah.
And there was a boss for every section. So he would go into their cells and cook them crack cocaine.
Okay, so is he the boss for all of them?
No.
Oh,
he's just the cook.
Cook. Okay.
So he would just cook crack cocaine.
So he's look after them basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he basically took me under his wing and he told me how everything worked. And alhamdulillah, I think my time in prison really helped me out because it showed me what being humble is, you know. And sometimes I would tell him, I would make fun of, like, I would tell him, like, "Hey, you're worse than the president, bro. Everybody comes up to you and wants to shake your hand. Like, are you important here or what?" He's like, "Nah, man." He's like, I just treat everybody the same, you know. And he shows me around and everything, you know. I see how things work, and I'm feeling like I'm feeling good because those people that had hurt me in the other prison, they were now in the janitor business, while I was walking around with my shank.
Oh, so the tables have turned now.
The tables have turned.
Yeah.
And inside of me, I was like, I want to get them back, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay humble. The time of the classification had passed. They call us the new incomers. They call us and they're like, "We're gonna assign you guys the section where you guys are gonna go." And they start telling everybody, "You're gonna go to this section, this section, this section." They don't call me out, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up? Where am I going?" He's like, "You're going to maximum security." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Maximum security?" I run back to the cell with where the homeboy is, and I ask him, I'm like, "Hey, they want to send me to maximum security. Can you help me out? Like, pay for them to let me stay here with you, because you would only hear horror stories about maximum security."
Is that state or federal?
That's state. That's still state. And he goes down and he tells them, "How much is it for him to stay here?"
No price.
No price. This comes up from the top.
Oh, so someone wants you in maximum.
Yeah, they're saying that you're a danger for general population. I'm like, I'm 5'4", homie. What kind of danger am I? They're like, I don't know, man. He's like, you're gonna go to maximum, but don't worry. He's like, I'm gonna call into maximum and make sure that you get treated.
How long were you in state at this prison? How long were you there?
2 years.
So this is 2 years later now.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in prison total?
3 years. 3 years and 6 months.
3 years. Still waiting on trial.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when I get to maximum security, it's like a whole different ball game, you know. The main heads. Okay, so the maximum security is inside this same state prison, but it is isolated from the whole whole sections.
So you're not gonna see anyone from
No,
the side, yeah.
you don't see anybody. There's just 2 sections in maximum security, but the main bosses that really control the whole distribution of who gets what kind of drugs, what comes into the prison, are in maximum security because they're protected from the rest of the crowd.
Okay.
They have a deal with the main director of the whole penitentiary system.
We call him the governor here.
The governor. So by this time, I get received by them, and they ask me like, so were you one of the ones in leading the other prison? Because they wanted to get him, you know, because obviously they hear about like what they do, you know, like they hear that they're extortioning people, they're thinking they're bad, but there's always going to be someone better than you, know, and someone that wants to deal with you if you're that type of person. And I tell them like, nah, I'm one of the people that stood up to them and that fought. And they're like, all right, you good. They shake my hand and they're like, he can chill. So they put me into a cell. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be chill, you know, it's going to be chill. A week passed, bro. My trial was coming up. I had to go to court. I wake up this morning, you know, take off my shoelaces because you have to go without shoelaces. And I was getting ready to go to court. And by this time, I had made money inside of state prison, that I had smartphones, you know.
Yeah.
I had a smartphone inside of prison, and I was doing my thing, you know. Something like I was on the phone with this girl, checking, coordinating everything with my lawyers.
Okay.
And I just hear everything pop off like ta 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 ta, no, and I start seeing gunshots, and I start seeing people running back and forth. One of the people that I was in the cell, he runs out and throws me a shank, and he's like, "Come on!" And I run down it was a 2-floor section. Yeah. I run down the stairs and I see this one of the people inside of prison that was running with the leaders.
Yeah.
His throat sliced and his guts were out. He was dead on the staircase.
Was he stabbed or shot?
He had been stabbed.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it was 14 people killed. The main boss of the prison, he had his head cut off and he got burnt alive.
You know, I noticed in South America, especially Mexico, when there's prison riots, a lot of people die, right?
Yeah.
That's just normal.
It's normal.
And there's guns inside them prisons.
Yeah.
Because all these riots I read about in the last 10, 20 years, there's always 20, 30 people dying in the riot. So,
obviously, I didn't know what was going on, you know? But all I knew was stick with the people that are people. Not with the people that are in charge. Because they're the ones that are going to basically get all the heat from the people, you know? The people get tired and they go after them. So, when this happens, obviously, my court date prolongs
even longer.
Because in this week that I was there was 3 riots that popped off at the same time.
So just to stop you, the gunshots, where did they come from? The riot?
From the main boss. He tried to defend himself. Obviously, he only had 1 clip.
And they got him.
They still got him.
He did.
So he had locked himself up, and once his clip was out, he pulled out a machete and he was waiting. He's like, "Come on, just wait until the government comes."
Was he cartel?
Yeah, he was a cartel leader.
And who was the other cartel trying to get him?
Just people.
Oh, so that happens in Mexico.
Yeah, people get tired of the cartel stepping on you, pushing you down.
So it's normal, like gangsters rise up and say no.
Especially the gangsters, the OGs.
But wouldn't that have consequence for their people outside?
No, because you got nothing to lose. So this is what we say. You might have all the support from the outside, from the cartels, but until they come, we already teared you apart.
Yeah, that's true.
You ain't gonna. It don't matter if the whole government has
They don't
you.
know who done it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's a whole. It's a mess. At the end of the day, he ends up by himself in the cell. All his people are down, heads smashed in, dead, and he's still trying to like fight against these people. And the homeboys start putting in bed sheets, lit up bed sheets into
Set
his
him on
cell
fire to get him out.
smoke him out, and for him to he passed out. They break the
Barricade.
the lock, and they pull him out, and they start going to his head. They slice his head off, and his
head
yeah,
off?
they cut off his head clean, bro. And the homeboy
What
like,
is it about Mexico slicing heads off, man?
the Aztecs used to do it, you know.
They be rolling them heads into nightclubs, you know that, like, and just to scare people. And
So he had the vato's head in his hand, and he's like, "Come on, homie." And I'm walking down with him. I'm like, "What is this? What is he doing with the head?" We go out to the basketball court, and we start playing basketball with his head, homie. And meanwhile, you got the state police in the helicopters throwing
tear gas
to try to calm everything down. Obviously, I had been in a riot. I knew that the government was going to come in at the end of the day.
The riot had nothing to do with you.
No. They had nothing to do with me. I knew that they were going to come in and they were going to get us, you know. And I was like, I was so worried about them coming in because I had already gotten my ass whipped by the government from the last riot.
Because they could end up killing you.
Yeah, no, the government beats the crap out of you. But the surprising thing was that they were like, "You don't know where you're at, right? Like, this is maximum security, and they gotta respect it, or we'll fight to death in here." The anti-riot people came in and they start knocking on the main maximum security door, and they're like, "Everybody back to their cell," and they're like, "Nah, we ain't going anywhere. We just want you guys to take your trash." So by this time, they had gathered all the people that they had killed into in the main entrance, and they have stacked them up, bro. Like, even the guy's head, they put it on the top, and they stick the paper on his eye, and they stab something in with the letter saying why he got killed. I was like, man, the government ain't gonna listen to you guys, bro. The government left. They just came in, picked their bodies, and left us alone. We didn't do nothing. Happened to us, right? By this time, obviously, the people that did create the riot, they see me in my cell, and they're like, "Hey, we saw you were out there helping out the homeboys." I'm like, "All right, yeah. Well, I don't got any other choice, right?" And they threw a half ounce of cocaine, and they're like, "Here, this is for you." He's like, "You got people outside, right? We heard you got people outside." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, we'll be in touch," because obviously you're in prison.
It's currency, huh?
Yeah, and it's currency, and at the same time, you have a phone. You got people outside. Like, maybe some fellow has a robbery in another state, and they need people that aren't from that same state, so they'll borrow people from you, and he'll let you borrow people for anything. That goes up from kidnapping,
anything,
you know. So I was starting to become a big role in maximum security. My time comes where they're gonna tell me if I'm gonna go free or not, you know. By this time,
about 4 years now?
No, it was already towards the middle of towards 3.5 years. I was more worried of going outside than staying inside because I was already used to the inside. You know, I had everything. If I wanted a woman, if I wanted a drink, for whatever I wanted, I could just call it in, and because we had the control of the prison. I ended up getting my freedom. They acquitted me. They dropped all the charges and they let me go. You know? Once I left, obviously I still had the connections into the state prison and into the other prisons that I had been.
Yeah.
So they were asking me, it's like, "What are you gonna do? Are you gonna work or what?" I'm like, "I don't really know." And I had my crew, and I was talking to one of my close mates, and I was asking them, I'm like, "You know what? If we don't get any support from a big cartel, we're gonna leave, man, because I ain't risking getting caught and getting tortured and getting."
That's what they do.
Yeah, they dismember you, bro.
Yeah, they torture you.
They torture and then they dismember you.
Do you remember that video of the two cartel members?
Yeah.
That got caught and they tortured both of them.
Yeah, they cut off the heads with the chainsaw.
Yeah, the one with the chainsaw, the one with the knife.
Yeah,
and the one with the knife took much longer. Crazy, they're brutal, isn't
it? It's something that a lot of people can't deal with it because in my time inside cartels, obviously, you see a lot of people getting their life taken away, and obviously in someone that has time and that knows how things work, you have to take everything as a job. You don't take anything personal. Because if you take it personal, you ain't gonna survive.
Right.
I could be eating right here and they could be working right beside me and I wouldn't care. Because at the end of the day, it's better for them instead of me, you know? So when I get out, obviously I'm not working with that cartel no more, the one that I had gone into prison with. But my name was going around. My enemies wanted to get me, and other people wanted to contract me. So I remember I was talking to my mate, and I was like, you know what? If we don't get any support, any real support, you know, because obviously there's people that just say, oh, we work for this cartel, and they just bring you drugs, but they don't bring you any weapons, nothing to fight with, you know. Because obviously, if you want territory, you're gonna have to go. You're gonna have to go to war with whoever's in that territory. Yeah. And they ain't fighting with small handguns. They're fighting with grenades. They're fighting with rifles. You know, it's really it's like a military against military.
It's like a real war. Yeah.
So you know that now that I had that mindset of that I've already been in prison. I ain't going back. I'd rather die in a firefight than go back into prison. Yeah. Because I know that at the end of the day, the cartels aren't going to take me out of prison. I don't know how I came out of prison.
You're not really with the cartel now.
Exactly. So my mindset had already changed to loyalty. Worry about those people that get in the car with you and that are ready to ride and ready to die for you. Yeah. Don't worry about the people that are supposedly on top of you, sending you to do their dirty business. And when I was speaking to my brother, I get a phone call, you know, and they're like, hey, you know what? They want to meet you. I'm like, who wants to meet me? Some people from the south. The cartel is called La Familia Michoacana, the FM. They're basically co-workers with the Sinaloa cartel. Okay. They control the south of Mexico City. Sinaloa cartel controls north from the Mexico City. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really think this is like. Sometimes you don't really believe it because you like, obviously, having worked in the cartels for several years, being in prison for several years, you know how things are. You know a lot of people just talk, and they don't really demonstrate that there's power. So they call me into a certain point. I get there, and out of nowhere, 10 pickup trucks come. Everybody gets off dressed like paramilitary, you know, and they're like, "You're Smiley, yeah, get in." They snatch me in, bro. We set off for like 3 weeks. I didn't even know where I was at. They took my phone. They took everything. We were just waiting for the main bosses to give me the opportunity to talk to them, right? In my head, I was like, I need to send message back home that I'll be back because obviously
they don't know where you're going.
Yeah. And it was very like surreal because you're used to fighting in the city, you know. So the city warfare is very different from desert and mountain regions where there's no government. So I'm in the mountains with these people that have my life in their hands, and finally the time comes when they're like, hey, you know what? The boss wants to meet you. Now the boss is Don Pescado. Don Pescado and Don Fresa, they're two brothers. Anybody can look them up. They're called Hermanos Hurtado. They're very powerful people, bro. Yes. That anybody that knows about cartels, they know who I'm talking about. It comes to the moment where I get to meet these people, and you know, I just say what it is, you know, like I'm a youngster. I'm from this state, and I need help to fight against the people that are controlling that state. I want to get rid of them because obviously my life is in danger, and I pledge my loyalty to you guys. And they're like, you know, this is a serious organization, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, you ready to fight? I'm like, yeah. He's like, we've heard good things about you. We've heard you've put in work in prison and that you're a man of word. He pulls up $1 million pesos, probably like $100,000. There you go. He gives me 14 rifles. He gives me people. He gives me trucks. He gives me everything, and head off. I start working with these people. I worked for them for like almost 2 years, bro. A little bit less than 2 years. By this time,
what was your objective?
My objective was cleaning.
I mean, like,
or what was my objective?
Objective, like
in whole?
Why did you want to control that territory, or why did you want to take over that territory?
Because the last people that had killed my brother they were still in that territory.
Okay. That was their territory.
Yeah, exactly. That was their territory. So I just wanted to get rid of the last
remnants of it. Yeah.
The last remnants of that organization.
And they're still trying to kill you as well. So.
Right now?
They still wanted to kill you at that
point.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They had even the government.
So you kind of not really had no choice, really.
They were working with the government. So if the government would have arrested me, they wouldn't have turned me into the police station. No, they would have turned me into the cartels. So I started putting in work. I started demonstrating who I am, and I started getting a lot of people in my line. A lot of people start being loyal to me, and my group starts growing from 30 people to 100, 110. We start putting communications, because obviously in order for you to work, in order for you to roll into the city, you gotta have a repeater. You gotta have your own broadcast signal for your radios. You gotta have your own points of communication to understand when the military's coming, when the federal government's coming. You have to have all that under control, or else you're just fighting blind, and you're gonna end up getting into a confrontation with the government.
Proper military stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets to the point where obviously, like, I know that I'm rolling deep, and inside me, like, I start questioning death. Because I'm obviously working in the type of line that I was working in. It's gunfights every 3 weeks. It's seeing people die, close ones getting killed. And I had really close encounters where I almost saw my life go. And there was a funny situation where we get ambushed, and the car that was behind us was a pickup truck, and it rammed us in, and it starts firing on us, right? And I start feeling all the impacts in the back of the seat where I was. I was in the back while two of my mates were side by side, and the pilot and the co-pilot. One of the bullets passes and just like what do you call it? Like, it just
skims you.
Skims me. Yeah. And it burns me right here, and it hits the co-pilot thing, and it bounces off to the radio thing. And inside my head, I just turn around, pull up my rifle, turn around in the same seat, I just stick it out, and start going off on them. We get out of the situation, and the homeboy gets off, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "I don't know what you have, bro, but there's something that's taking care of you." By that time, obviously, I had amulets of the Holy Death in gold, and he's like, she will protect you until a certain point. Once you've accomplished their objective, she will reclaim what you have.
That's what they believed.
Yeah. At that moment, obviously, I was not 100% positive in what if I didn't believe in her. And I remember I answered. I'm like, I don't believe in her. My life is not in her, in her hands. But with that altercation, I start.
Was it another cartel hit you guys, or?
Yeah, another cartel. I start questioning everything, bro. So we're up in the mountains, and I'm looking at I'm looking at nature in itself, nature. No
mountains
cities.
And the grass and
everything, bro. Like, you're up in the mountains, and at nighttime, people don't understand. Cartels don't operate like, they don't live in luxury houses. That's not how they operate. They gotta be moving.
On the run,
They're always gotta be moving, because you always got government behind you, and they gotta be moving from place to place. So there's sometimes that you'll spend a couple of weeks
in a villa and stuff.
in a really good luxury what do you call it, ranch, and there'll be weeks, months that you will be spending in the mountains, sleeping on the ground, and I would look up in the sky, and I'd see the beauty of the night sky, bro, and I would ask myself, like, what's after death? Like, I know that I'm not afraid of dying. And I've demonstrated that I'm not going to go alive. Like, I'm not going to get sent back to prison.
Yeah.
I'm going to die, and I'm not afraid of it, because I've had, when you know that you're down for that, and you know that you're willing to die for that.
That's your life, right?
It's your life,
Did you believe in hereafter at that point?
So that's what I started questioning, bro.
Yeah.
I started questioning everything, because, like, in my mind, I was seeing myself getting murdered. So I was preparing myself to pass away, because I knew that at the end of the day, nobody lasts. Nobody
in that game.
Nobody lasts. Everybody gets caught up in it, and that's the name of the game, And
what do they call him? The boss of the boss is Felix Gallardo.
Gallardo.
the guy who started the whole thing in Mexico with the Colombians.
Yeah. What's his name?
He went to prison then, didn't he?
Yeah, he went to prison, and
He was
he
the
ended
boss.
up blind in prison, bro. And Felix Gallardo, he's still in prison. They're not even letting him go.
I heard the courts gave order to let him out, but they didn't let him out.
Yeah, they didn't let him out. They arrested him right
And he
away.
was like the top guy, and he went to prison. So everyone's gonna
He
go.
was making business with the president of Mexico, bro.
Mexico, yeah.
He had everything under control. After Pablo Escobar, he was the one that took control of the whole route.
Yeah.
Because the Mexicans had the distribution and the logistics to take the merchandise from Colombia.
In that game in Mexico, is a matter of time, prison or death.
Prisoner of death.
A matter of time.
So, obviously, I start questioning myself, and I start thinking to myself, you believe in honor, you believe in loyalty, you believe in being humble, but are you gonna die for this cause? Like, this cause has no honor. Because I knew that obviously you're poisoning your own society, you're poisoning your own environment. You know, I had homies that had met me before I was in the cartels, and when I met them again, seeing me in the status that I was in, they'd be like, I want to be like you when I grow up. You know, I want to be like you. They started looking up to me, and I would get chills. I was like, homie, you don't want to be like me, because in reality, you don't know what the type of life that one lives. A lot of people look at Netflix. They look at
think it's fun.
They think it's like, oh yeah, homie, you got no idea what the reality is of that lifestyle. So when I started questioning everything, you know, I remember I was speaking to some of my close mates, and I was telling them, you know what, I'm gonna leave, bro. Like, I'm leaving this environment. I'm done. And they're like, you know, you can't leave. You know that, right? I'm like, I know, but that's what I'm telling you guys. Are you guys gonna go? Are you guys gonna snitch me out? Are you guys gonna deliver me out? Or what's going on? And they're like, nah, homie, we got respect for you, because you showed us that in reality the loyalty has to be within yourselves, within your own crew. There's no loyalty up with the bosses. So I had this last encounter where I get ambushed by the state government, right? The state government ambushed us. And I had a dream. This is weird, bro. It's the same like with my other dream.
Yeah.
Where I had gotten dismembered in this certain area, right? Well, this same area where I had gotten dismembered, we got ambushed by the state government. We fight them off, and we lose our vehicles and everything, but we move into the mountains, and we were able to get to a safe place. 2 weeks later, I find out that it wasn't just the state government, that they were also being they were working with the cartels, and that they weren't there to arrest us. That they started firing on us because they wanted us dead, because they were going to dismember us. And I started thinking, I'm like, why am I having these dreams, and why am I dealing with this stuff? At that moment, I remember I started having problems with in the inner cartel. There started being envy between leaders of Sicariato, because obviously I was a newcomer, 2 years, and I had more control than other people that had been 5 years.
Yeah.
And so they would start envying the way that I would work, right? So I started seeing that they were trying to set me up to get me killed. And it was like, you know what? If you're gonna leave, you're gonna leave right now. I remember at that time it was like 3 a.m. I called up some of the closest people that I had, and I told them, you know what? I'm bouncing. Whoever wants to go with me, let's go.
Do you have a plan or? No plan.
No plan.
Yeah.
And they're like, nah, you're good, homie. Go. If anything, we'll hit you up. We'll cover your leave, you know. So I start taking off my
Body armor.
my bullet vest. I start taking everything I have. I just kept a 9mm Austria that I had, and I put my rifle down, and I start taking out everything, right. And I just took like 50 grand pesos. That's like $2,500. $2,500. That's all I took. because I didn't want the cartels to say, "Oh, you took my drugs, you took
money.
yeah." You know, so obviously we had money there that
Then
was
you get a problem with them.
yeah. So I basically leave everything there, and I get into a Jeep and I just step on it. But I got to a certain town. They already knew where I was at in the morning. The good thing was that the people that were with
Who's
me,
they?
the same cartel.
Oh, the cartel
The
knew
car-
where you go.
Yeah, they already know. They knew exactly where I was at.
GPS on the Jeep maybe.
No communications, bro. They knew where I was at, and they're like, they told one of my close friends, they're like, you know what, you know where this place is? Take us, because we're gonna go tie him up and take him to the main boss, so that they can deal with him.
Just because you left.
Yeah, that's treason, bro. That's treason, bro. They don't accept it because they think in their point of view, they don't know if you're betraying them for another cartel.
So in their mind is
Yeah.
you die for this or go to prison. That's it.
Exactly.
There's no leaving the game, going to the sunset.
Yeah.
Because I always ask myself the question: some of these cartel leaders got hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. Why are you still in the game?
Exactly.
I think that's just how it is. You live in that and you die in that game.
Exactly. And when I end up here in this location, I get a call and I hear one of my homies. He's like, "Hey, get out of there right now, homie. They're heading towards your location." I was like, oh, man, I remember.
Did you know they were gonna come through? Did you think how they might leave me alone?
No, I knew they were gonna come
Oh,
from
you
me.
knew
I
they were
didn't.
gonna
I didn't think they were gonna get my location so quick.
Quick, okay.
I was thinking I got like a couple days until they actually
Find
pinpoint me, and then by that time I'm gone. And when he called me, he's like, "I'm gonna do everything I can to try to stop them from getting to you."
Mm.
And obviously he did. He told them, "You know what? There's military checkpoints going into the location. We can't go right now." So he gave me a couple hours of time. I grabbed my stuff. I grabbed a couple of my clothes because I got to a location where I had a girl there, you know. So I had clothes there. Picked up my clothes and I booked it. I got into a bus and I went all the way from the south to the north, the other end of the country. It's a 3-day journey in bus.
Yeah.
So I get to this location, and I chill out, you know. I'm just waiting, you know, and I get communications with people that I had down there, and they're pissed, bro. They really want to get you. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like I'm good over here with Matt. I don't think they'll find me. So they're like, no, we wish you the best, you know.
You're by the border near America now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm near by the border. By this time, like I'm trying to get my get my head around the situation, because obviously you're accustomed to being in a different type of environment. So from being a cartel sicario leader to becoming just a normal person and having to deal with society with people, it's really hard, bro. It's really hard, to the point where I started getting depressed, you know, falling into depression because I was
lost, didn't you? Don't know what to
yeah,
do,
you know, I didn't have anything, homie.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have nothing.
You're back to square one, basically.
Exactly. And Shaitan was playing his game because obviously I had voices inside me telling me, "You're a coward. You said you were going to die with your people. You said you were ready to."
That's shaitan.
You know? And I remember, like, at that moment, I was working I got a job in construction. I was going to that job in a bicycle, bro. I was like, man.
So you went back to work?
Yeah, I went back to work. Obviously, you don't need papers. You get really low pay.
Because you're in the north now. You don't have enemies up there,
Yeah.
so you could kind of like be half normal, basically.
Exactly. But I was living by myself, secluded from anybody. And I started falling into depression because my sisters would go to La Paz in Baja California Sur to go vacation, but they wouldn't come see their brother that they hadn't seen in long.
They obviously
long
knew you were involved in crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
they didn't want that.
And I remember I got in contact with my mom. I tried to fix things. You know, I apologized for everything, for all the troubles I gave her. And it wasn't the same thing because obviously you're gone for more than a decade out of their life.
How old were you now?
I was like 29.
Okay.
So this is barely there. So I've been a Muslim for 2 years.
Yeah.
So when I had just recently turned 29, I was in Mexicali.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get a hold of myself, like where I was going to end up, because my doors were closed. The government had locked my accounts by the government, by the government side. They had grabbed me from. They had me
Yeah.
tied up, so I couldn't really get a job where I was gonna get paid good, or I couldn't really look for any, any benefits in trying to become a good citizen. There was no options, so I only had the option of keeping a low key, but it only worked to a certain degree, because obviously you manage yourself with respect, and you expect respect back. But when that respect does not come back from individuals that think that life is a game, and that they haven't dealt with real gangsters, that if you disrespect them, they're gonna deal with you straight away, because that's, at the end of the day, that's all you have in prison.
That's all you know. Yeah.
Exactly. So
that's how you're programmed.
exactly. So it was constant fights at the work. I fell into very bad depression, and by this time, some of my homies from back in prison had passed away. They had hanged themselves because they had a sentence of 80 years in prison.
Yeah.
They were never going to come out. And I had seen homies pass away in prison same way. They would fall in depression.
Yeah.
Just rather take their lives instead of facing that time in prison. Because in Mexico, it's not like in the States. In the States, you serve a life sentence and it's 15 years only.
Yeah.
No, in Mexico, 30 years is 30 years. You
don't get any half.
You don't get any half break. Yeah. So a lot of people in prison in Mexico, they fall in depression because their sentences are long, 55 to 80 to 120 years. Yeah. They ain't never coming out. So I remember by this time, like, I was going to churches,
Yeah.
I was trying to find some peace inside me, because obviously I didn't have that peace. Yeah. And I would go to evangelical churches to try to, like, understand what was my purpose. Because at the time, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any purpose of life.
You lost, basically.
Exactly. So I get to my house after coming from a service, and all I could see was people trying to fill up their ego. People talking about themselves, how Jesus had done something in their lives, but they're always using their example instead of using examples that were humble, or that were talking about real truth. I get home and I call my mom's, and my little nephew answers, and my nephew's like, he said, "Hey, Uncle Zach." I'm like, "Hey, is my mom there? Is your grandma there?" He's like, "Yeah, but they're all eating." So my mom was sitting in the table with all my brothers and with my brother and my sisters, and obviously they're married already. They have kids, and I felt like they just turned around and they're like, "Who are you talking to?" They asked the kid, my nephew, and he's like, "Oh, my Uncle Zach," and they're like, "Right." Basically, I felt like I didn't belong.
The black sheep, basically.
They basically ignored me. I hang up the call, and I start I'm like, why am I still here? Like not even my own family.
They're not interested either. So.
Exactly, they got their own lives. So why am I still here?
And they're still in America.
Yeah, they're still in the U.S. Until the moment I still haven't seen my mom's. So I get a rope and I start making my rope. I'm like, you know what? I ain't no coward. I'm gonna hang myself right now. But I didn't have anything else, bro.
In Mexico, killing yourself is not looked at as a negative thing.
Yeah, but it's something that is very popular. Like, very popular. A lot of people commit suicide because of the life because of the hardship of living in Mexico. Like I said, it's a third world country, so there's a certain amount of stress and pressure from debts, from everything that comes into what it plays to be in a third world country. And a lot of people, they take their lives, right? And I remember I was making my rope, and I was looking where to hang myself. And
you're at home now.
Yeah, I was by myself. I was living in it was called what's it called?
Hostel?
No, it was just basically one room with the kitchen, with the built-in bathroom. And
a studio flat.
A studio, yeah, there you go. A studio. And people that are in prison and that have seen other homeboys take their lives, they know that they don't need to hang themselves from up there. They hang themselves from the cell door, and they just sit on they sit on their weight, they don't, and they die.
Yeah, I've seen that in the movies.
You know?
Yeah.
So you know that you don't need to be hanged, like you don't need to hang from the top. You like, you know, like when you want to die, you want to die. And I remember I started putting everything, and I was crying, homie. Like for real, I was.
So this is the end.
Yeah, I had touched rock bottom in my life, you know, and I remember like when I was like putting the rope on the door. Inside of me, I was like, something was telling me, "You ain't no coward, homie. Like, what are you gonna do?" And I sit down on my bed, bro, and I'm looking at the rope, and I think to myself, like, you know what? If there's something out there that is real, guide me to something that is truth, that is truthful, that is real, you know, something that I can hold on to, and that I know that it's not tampered with, or that it's not fake, you know. I close my eyes, and I'm like, I'm not gonna kill myself today, and I lay back, and I turned on my computer, and I opened YouTube, bro. I don't know why, but there was a black screen Quran recitation, and I click on it, and I start hearing the recitation, and it just, you know, just comforted me, and I fell asleep. I woke up.
Well, you didn't know what it was.
No, I didn't know what it was.
It's a black. Do you know what surah it was, or
no?
You just clicked on it.
I just clicked on it.
Did you know it was the Quran?
No, I didn't know.
It was just for you, just a noise, basically.
I started hearing it, and
you liked it.
Yeah, you know when you don't need to know Arabic to feel.
Of course, the tranquility. He's brought you peace, basically.
Exactly. So obviously, I've always been active in combat sports, you know. And a homeboy invited me over to his house. He said, "Hey, you want to see this? There's a UFC fight coming up. You want to see it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm down." And it was Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Gaethje, you know. And obviously, the fight went really quick, you know. And I see Khabib saying, "Alhamdulillah," and I was like, "What is that?" Alhamdulillah. And I started investigating, you know.
So at that point, you made no connection between the video you watched and Alhamdulillah, what Khabib was saying. You didn't realize this is the same religion.
Yeah, and I started looking up in it. I put Alhamdulillah. What does Alhamdulillah mean? And I saw what it meant. And I was like, what is this? And I started investigating, bro. And I started knowing about Khalid bin Walid, about the Sahaba, how they were real warriors, homie. They were real men, you know?
I mean, yeah, before Islam and after Islam.
Exactly. And I fell in love with it, and I was like, whoa. Like, and then I read that surah where it says that Allah guides who He wills, you know? And a lot of people ask me, like, who gave you dawah? No one did, homie. Allah guided me.
You didn't know nothing about Islam.
I didn't know anything about Islam. Allah guided me to this path, you know.
I suppose, you know, being in Mexico, the algorithm is not going to have any Islamic content on YouTube because you never watched it before.
Yeah, nothing.
For that video just to come up like that,
and it was crazy, homie, because like obviously, like I said, being humble is a part of our deen, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Sahaba showed what being humble is. And I would always look up to my ancestors. Obviously, I'm Aztec, and I have family members that have fought in the Mexican Revolution. I was always inspired by these revolutionary fighters, you know, that gave their life for what they were fighting for. But obviously, you would always find them coming short, because religion was not in their mindset.
in spirits and things.
Exactly. So I think when I accepted Islam.
So just to stop you quickly. So once you start investigating, how did you investigate? On the YouTube, basically?
Yeah, YouTube. I started investigating on YouTube, and then I remember I downloaded this app to speak to people from Saudi Arabia, bro, because I wanted to know how to revert, you know, how
to pray and things like that.
Yeah, I wanted to learn. I wanted to accept Islam, basically. I wanted to say my shahada. And
so after how long from the Khabib fight to like from that moment you wanted to know more?
Yeah, month, and then I had accepted Islam.
Wow.
But then the real war came with jinn and with the evil spirits. I had never had any.
So you've took the shahada now. How did you take the shahada?
I was in this app talking to two brothers from Saudi Arabia. They were Sunni, and they helped me out take my shahada, and then they sent me content to how to pray and everything. So I started, obviously, little by little I started learning, and so started praying. I think after a month that I had taken shahada, I woke up for Fajr. I prayed, and I went back to bed. I lay down, and out of nowhere, I feel something get on top of me, and I feel how it grabbed my wrist, and it picked me up, and it turned me around inside the bedroom by myself. Right at this moment, I wasn't scared, and I remember I couldn't speak. I was trying to mumble something, and all I could say was Allahu Akbar, and I wake up again in my bed. I was put back into my bed, and I noticed that this is the truth, because when I was back in the game, witnessing all this satanic stuff that they do, because obviously they have their own rituals with the Holy Death, with people that they kill, they keep ears, they do a bunch of crap that you would say something from there you must see something, but you don't.
There's a lot of like black magic in Mexico.
Exactly, but I never saw nothing when I was there. I never felt anything supernatural,
because you didn't believe in it really,
until I accepted Islam, and then
about jinn and the other side.
And then I noticed that they weren't happy about that. They weren't happy about my decision of changing my life, because obviously I was working for them at the end of the day.
Of course.
Every drug dealer has every major drug dealer that plays a part in the cartels, they have their own satanic rituals, bro. And
100%. Yeah.
I've been witness of what they do, and I, at the moment when I was there, I didn't really understand until I accepted Islam, and I saw how Allah kept me protected from everything, allowing me to understand what that life was and what was my purpose in life.
Umar ibn Khattab, he said something very famous. You know what he's saying? He said sometimes the people with the most darkest past, they appreciate Islam the most. You understand? So when you see that darkness, and then you see the purity of Islam, you understand this is the truth.
Yeah.
And
that's the major reason why I accepted Islam, because of the way that they lived and the way that they died.
With honor.
With honor, exactly.
And for a just cause.
Exactly.
Not for personal gain. When the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu died, he had nothing in possessions really. I think he had a shield and a couple of things. He had I can't remember the exact number, but he had a few dinars, a couple, and he told his wife to give it away. He told her to give it away before he passes away, because they had no personal gain from this. It was for God,
Exactly.
So that when you realize that, because everything in this earth, whether you work for the cartel, you're selling drugs, is everything's for yourself. You're striving for yourself. People it's everything for themselves, and that's the pure way of life, really. So once you've turned Muslim now, it's been a month or two. Where do you stand with your enemies and the old people?
I started.
Well, you can't say to them, "I'm Muslim."
Yeah, no, but the most what I was surprised was that once I accepted Islam, I get offers from different cartels, from old friends of mine that were still in prison, that had contacts throughout the Mexican region, and they would call me up, telling me, "Hey, you want to get in? They got you. They know that they know what you're capable of, and they're willing to pay you good money." People would call me up and ask me, "How much would you charge me to take care of this person?" This and that. A bunch of opportunities came.
Temptations.
And I knew that inside of me, I was thinking for me, it was kind of difficult because at the moment I couldn't work. So I was struggling financially. And inside of me, I was like, you know what? It's easy for me to just go down there, take care of this, and come back and get some bread. But then inside of me, I was like, but then if you do that, that'd be like turning your back on Allah. Once He has giving you the blessing of understanding Islam. You know, the blessing of being able to hear it and being able to understand it. Because a lot of people hear it and they don't understand it. It's like you tell someone the sun gives light, and they cover their eyes and they say it doesn't give light. You know, you ain't gonna change someone that's in their error, in their ignorance. But even the same Quran says that Allah will keep in the ignorance who He wills. You know, and it's true. Like you notice that once you understand what Islam is, it's a blessing for you to understand it, because there's so many people out there that hear Islam and they don't accept it. They don't even want to live by it, or they don't even want to give the opportunity, because they're blinded by their own ignorance, you know. So for me to be able to understand it was like, you gotta strive to cut away from all that environment. By this time, obviously, a lot of people, my old members that were with me, they were also leaving the cartel, and I've had impact in their lives and in mates from prison.
So were they like shocked? Like, what's this guy doing? Like,
bro, you know what they tell me? They're like, you know what? When we were in prison, homie, like, we would see Christians come and try to give us testimony and try to baptize us and try to convert us into Christianity. And you know what we would say? You haven't walked in my shoes.
Yeah.
How are you gonna come and tell me how to live? You know? He's like, well, where did you They call me, you're a Talibaner or what? Are you gonna explode yourself or what?
I suppose that's all they know about Islam. That's
exactly.
it, Taliban. Isn't
it's
it?
just about the 9/11 and that they're a bunch of terrorists. So obviously it was like they're telling me like, homie, like, for us to see that how you've changed, you're nothing like the person that we used to deal with in that certain aspect. That anybody that I talk to nowadays from back home, the only thing I talk about is Islam and how it changed my life.
They must be shocked. Like, what's happened here? You know,
you
can't understand it, innit?
The funny thing is that I got a lot of people in prison, right? And when I left the cartels, they would send threats by killing people and leaving them with big messages in bridges, and they obviously
that's their thing.
That's their thing in Mexico. So I knew the people that were obviously threatening me, right? They get caught up, they end up in prison. I get a phone call from a homeboy. Hey, homie, I got this person. He's the one that was messaging. He was the one that was threatening me. What do we do? We can take care of him if you want. And inside of me, like, the old Zach came out and like, you know what, homie, get him for me, you know. But then I was like, you know what? Give me a second. And inside of me, I was thinking about it. I'm like, nah, man, you know what? Take him a plate of food, give him a little bit of money, and tell him that I send him that, and that it's now his time to walk in prison. You know, I'm not that same person anymore.
Yeah, you moved on with your life.
Exactly, because it's like, obviously you hurt a lot of people, especially in the environment that I was in. You always end up taking someone's dad, someone's brother, you know. But at the end of the day, you know that they were in the game.
That's the thing, innit? You know, one of the things that I don't know if it's the right way to look at it or not. I can't look at it, but if you're in the game, you're in the game. There's consequences to that.
Exactly.
Game. And you can't cry about it later. And it was there. You choose that path, it's gonna come with some heat.
Exactly.
And when it comes, live with it.
Now, there's a difference between people that have honor in what they do and people that don't.
Exactly.
There's people that kill entire families, bro. That they dissolve entire families in acid. You know, they have no honor. They have no respect for anything.
They have no respect for human life. No?
In my case, like, I remember some cartel leader asked me, like, you know what, go deal with this person, and if you can't find him, kill his mom, kill his wife. And I'm like, I ain't that type of person, homie. Like,
yeah, that's crazy, man.
Like, I don't do that kind of things. And he's like, you want to have a problem with me? And I was like, whatever you want. Like, we're ready to go to war, but
they just seem bloodthirsty, man.
Like, they think that because they can impose that horror.
What's the purpose of killing a man's family? Like, what does that achieve for them?
to scare him or
to scare any other person that wants to do the same thing that this person did. To put in fear into their hearts that if you mess with me, if you cross me, I'm gonna eliminate your whole family. But what I learned was that
that just has a chain reaction.
it's karma, bro. I learned from OGs. They're like, you kill someone that's innocent, you're gonna get karma right back, and you ain't gonna end up well.
Cool.
So obviously, we always had that rule of don't kill children, don't kill women, and don't kill anybody that's not in the game. That is not has nothing to do with it, because once you do that, you're gonna get karma's gonna hit you right back. And obviously, you see how many people jump into the cartels. They don't last 2 months, bro. They don't last 3 months. They end up getting murdered. And it's horrible deaths. Like I've seen people skinned alive, bro.
Yeah, I read about that.
And it's something that I see.
Skin you alive, you know. Can you believe that?
That's crazy. I didn't even know that
Yeah,
really happens. Yeah.
Bro, Mexico.
No, yeah, they skin you. They
Mexico
cut you
is
with the razor, and they start pulling up your skin, and they start like if you're a pig or something.
Haven't you seen that film? Wesley Snipes, what he says. He's talking the thing, and he goes, "The Dominicans will do this. This will do that." He goes, "The Mexicans, they'll skin you alive."
Yeah.
You know, and that's real, man. They'll skin you alive.
And you see a lot of people that
Now, violence is like a form of like sick art there. So it's like the more brutal it is, the bigger message it sends. That's the way they look at it.
but as well, like the more the brutal the crime, the more heat you draw to your own cartel. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you need to know how to work. You can't like if the government sees you going to war with other cartel members, they're not gonna put on that much heat. Like if you go kill people and you kill a bunch of students, if you kill a whole family, you're not gonna have heat because they know that they're having their own problems and they're just observing from the outside. But once you start crossing the line and killing families, killing people that have nothing to do, you start getting military after you.
Federal government, basically. Yeah.
And believe me, when the military comes after you, it's not that military that has their uniform. It's the special operations.
Paratroopers.
Exactly, and they don't wear military clothes.
And they're not corrupt, are they? They're like,
no, you can't corrupt the military. There's high-ranking military people that, if they like an example, there's a important cartel in Mexico. Obviously, right now it's long gone, but in their moment they were called Los Zetas. I don't know.
I heard of them, yeah.
Los Zetas were basically trained by the U.S. government,
yeah.
right? They were special.
Troops, yeah.
They were special operations for the Mexican military, but the cartel started offering them more money than what the military gave them, right? So a lot of them they abandoned the military and they went into the cartel game. So there was special. Obviously, they had instructors from the military that were dedicated to hunt these people down because they would sit. They have a certain level of honor, you know. Like if we didn't train cartel members, so they would specifically go after these people, and Zetas wouldn't like. I've known of Zetas that have gone killed in TJ and in other parts of Mexico where their instructors have given them they've just put a bullet in their head. That's it. The government just says that they had a firefight. They don't explain anything. They just kill them. And that in reality, that's all that there is in the cartel life.
You know, now obviously being Muslim and stuff like that, like obviously you give dawah to people, friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How are they like towards the message of Islam? Like, how do they find it?
We understand that that in prison you got 10 mates. You know that only 3-4 of them are down to ride with you and to be loyal.
Yeah.
You know, so we take in how you say it? We praise that type of person.
Yeah, because in Mexico, like boxing is like a big thing, that warrior code
Yeah,
sort of thing. Yeah.
So anybody with that loyalty and that honor of being real with themselves, they have you in a pedestal where they know that like that person is a real G. Because at the end of the day, that's why I understood that your race has nothing to do with nothing. your actions are always going to speak for you. Don't matter where you're from. Don't matter if you're Chicano, if you're Mexican. I've met homeboys from that culture, from my culture, that the Chicano culture, that have been cowards, bro. And I've met Mexicans that are from the mountains that hardly speak any Spanish, that they speak more dialect than Spanish, and they show that they show that valor, you know, that loyalty, that honor. So when I speak to them, obviously I speak to them about how Islam started and what Islam accomplished.
And they relate to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they understand that at the end of the day, we're all humans. That there's no difference between an Arab and a Mexican, or a Mexican between a UK. No, we all come from the same same people, you know.
Of course, and you know, I can see why it would be appealing towards the Mexican people, because I think they will appreciate them morals and principles.
Yeah, that's 100%. And
100%.
I think because Christianity was forced on them as well.
Yeah,
you know,
and if you look at the Latinos in America, like they're taking Shahada a lot. You know, the Latino community in America,
they're growing a lot in the US.
As for like, you know, people, you've moved on now. You don't look at, you don't see people as enemies no more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've moved on. Obviously, if you're in a position where you can defend yourself, you can defend yourself.
Yeah.
But generally, you've moved on. You don't care about yourself. What about from their aspect? Do you think they still hold hatred? Because obviously they're still in that life.
Alhamdulillah, bro. Like I said before, nobody lasts in that environment, and a lot of my enemies are long gone, and some of them have been caught up. So I feel like in that aspect, I'm not worrying a lot of the cartel. For me, it's like, yeah, they remember me and everything, but they're not gonna waste investing their time, their money, their people to come hunt someone that did not steal anything from them. That at the end of the day showed loyalty to them and showed them.
And it's not even like you were the rival cartel now. You just you left it alone.
I left everything, and that's why I decided not to jump into any other cartel lines, because they would have seen that even with more hatred, you know. And if I would have left and probably taken a couple of people with me with rifles and killed their people in my state, then
with a problem,
they would have definitely made sure that they would have made me an example for anybody that betrays the cartel. But because of the way that I decided to leave and the way that I managed myself, in the way that I showed them, we have a saying in Mexico: "No somos corrientes." Basically, we're no cowards, you know. We're not ordinary people, you know. We consider ourselves like warriors, and we manage ourselves like warriors, you know, with honor and respect. And at the end of the day, respect has a lot to do with giving dawah to the homeboys that are back in prison and ex-cartel members, you know. Because a lot of them tell me like we respect you in the way that we know who you are, and we know that what you said you did, and now that you come back and you tell us about Islam and you explain to us what this religion is really about, we believe you. If it was anybody else, we wouldn't believe you. Believe me, like, we wouldn't care.
Because it's such a big thing, like, for them to see the change.
And I've had friends that obviously we still in contact because we send dawah material to Mexico. We get dawah material and we put it into prison. We have inmates that have left prison that were my inmates from prison, that they're now in the streets, and they've left also that criminal life, and they're helping me out, and they tell me like, your example is like a 360 of someone that has basically, you're someone totally different, and obviously they ask me and they tell me like, when we met you, we never thought that you were gonna end up in the UK, you know. We never thought that you were gonna end up in the type of environment that you're in now. That obviously, I'm a Muslim.
It's the polar opposite, evil to goodness and light.
Exactly.
You know, in England, England is much different to Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, completely different or whatever. You know, here,
a lot of the people watch. Let me ask you a question. I'll ask you this for myself. And I think we were asking this earlier him as well.
Yeah.
So this question is for us, yeah. So people watch Narcos and stuff. How close
Accurate?
is it to reality? Not even accurate. Because obviously we know they dramatize it, but how close is what they show to reality?
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
In the aspect of the trauma, like the storyline is basically what really how the Mexican cartel, the original federation started. Now the lifestyle that they live is way over dramatic, but
Right, yeah.
but everything you see there is basically true.
Because, like you said, a lot of time they're hiding and stuff like that. But where did they get that information from to make Narcos, for example? Someone must be giving them. They're quite detailed, some of this stuff, right?
They have obviously they've interviewed, like you said, Amado Carrillo Fuentes. They've
El
interviewed.
Chapo.
Obviously, El Chapo has written several books.
El Chapo's written books.
Well, they've interviewed him, and they have books written about how.
Okay.
Yeah, they got a few biographies.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Miles Zambada has also a lot of autobiographies. The DEA has a lot of information about them. So there's a lot of Americans. When they killed Camarena, do you remember? I think if you guys remember that part when they killed that DEA agent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was a major
mistake.
I've heard different about that, but
Kiki
Camarena.
That's it, yeah.
Kiki Camarena. So that was their downfall of the
Of that
of that
organization.
federation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Mexican government was playing both sides. They were helping out the Americans and they were helping out the cartels.
Mm.
But it's very realistic,
Realistic,
in the trauma of how they're playing them.
I suppose with the Mexicans, the cartels, they have so much money that they create armies.
Yes.
And because so much money is involved, like billions.
But it sounded like from kind of what you were saying before that the money doesn't trickle down though, because like going back to something that you were saying before, you said that when you left, you left almost with the equivalent of £2,500 English money, but you was quite high up in your.
There was
still
there was money there that had to be reported.
Yeah.
Because obviously,
Well, so didn't you have any personal money, or you just had the kind of
when you
the
live a
gang money?
life like that,
Yeah.
then you know that you ain't sure if you're gonna make it next week.
Yeah.
You just obviously when you're in a position where you have to keep people fed, you know, you
Yeah.
have to pay people to. You have to pay. What do you call them? Bribes
Yeah.
to the government, to the state government. Everything is about money.
So it was just lifestyle money, basically.
So
Just
everything
goes around, yeah.
rolls around because you have to pay the people. Or else the people, they don't stay with you.
They're going to be
Yeah.
loyal, isn't it?
You have to feed them. You have to put gas in your vehicles.
But also, I think like the ones at the top, they take the majority of the cake,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
like let's say they kidnap someone, because a lot of people don't understand that the cartels don't just traffic drugs. They fight for the rights to rob, to steal brand new cars. They fight for the rights to kidnap and to ask for ransom. And we're talking about millions.
Yeah,
we're not talking
that's
about
a big thing in
in
Mexico.
Mexico. That's a
kidnapping,
huge thing.
Yeah.
And they fight to impose a tax on
Civilian.
properties, like on businesses, like gas stations. Gas stations is one of the ones that have to pay high taxes to the cartels, or else the cartel will come and burn your place, will do a mess. But every cartel will say, "Oh, we come here and we come here to eradicate kidnappings, to eradicate extortions." That's what they're doing. So what you do is you get a kidnapping, or you handle a kidnapping. You get 10 million. You gotta send 7 million to the boss, and then those 3 million you have to divide it
Share
into the
so
people
many
that.
people, yeah. So I suppose in a way they're keeping you kind of hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you see, like in the West, a lot of drug dealers have this plan of like flying off into the sunset.
Yeah.
I don't think they give you the option. Like you're not flying off into the sunset.
That's what it sounds like. Because like over here, for example, even the person at the bottom of the tree, will still make good money.
Yeah.
So the guy who's running on the streets and he's at the lowest level, he's still making £1,000.
But I suppose you remember, Mexico's a third world country.
Yeah, so it's like
That's what I
equivalent. Yeah, but then it's like, but for me in Mexico, for example, they're like millionaires that are at the top, almost billionaires,
Billion.
Yeah, no,
which is totally different than over here, where it's like there's a few millionaires, but there's only a couple of
5
them.
million,
Yeah.
7 million, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it's not like
There's hundreds of
hundreds million.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not nothing like that.
because they have the ability of hiring 500, 10,000 people, and they're not getting like when you're a hitman in the cartel, you get paid. Let's say you get paid $3,000 every 2 weeks, $3,000 every 2 weeks.
It's a lot of money in Mexico, though, right? That's crazy.
That's like 60,000.
So you get a wage. So it doesn't matter how many hits.
Yeah.
you
You get a wage.
Yeah.
You get a wage.
Oh, so they pay the Sicarios a wage.
Yeah, we call them nominas. Basically, it's where everybody that you have working, they get paid every 2 weeks. They get
a
paid.
salary.
They get a salary.
That is wild, isn't
Yeah.
it?
But then again, like I said, you have to pay for communications, and your hitmen are totally apart from communications. Like you have bases in strategic places in the state, not in the city, because a lot of people think that cartels just run up and down because they're in control. No, they got people telling them, hey, you know what? You guys got to move because you guys got the military behind you guys, and it's always a cat and mouse game.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
At a high level, though.
At high levels.
Mm.
You know what? America just sound. I mean, Mexico just sound. You know, I was reading the statistics. America has like 15 to 20,000 murders a year, and the population is like 300 million.
Mm.
Mexico has 50,000 murders, and their population is like, I think, less than half, right?
Mhm.
About 100 million.
Mm.
So that must be just. It is like a war zone, basically.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's basically a war. Obviously, everybody wants. This is the problem that a lot of youngsters they get indoctrinated by the music industry.
Does that hip hop play in Mexico?
It's not hip hop. It's
They got their own thing in Mexico.
They got their own thing.
Well, like gangster rap, basically.
Yeah, it's basically gangster rap, but it's more like corridos, narco corridos.
Okay.
So that's what it's called. It's basically just songs about brave people, about famous cartel members, and they get indoctrinated into thinking that they might be the next Chapo, that they might be the next Mayo, that they might be the next high-ranking member in the cartel. When it's in reality,
It's not that.
No.
You don't realize until it's too late, basically.
exactly. So like I think that's what made us different in the way that we weren't loyal to no cartel. In that aspect that
You just want to get paid, basically.
yeah, we were getting paid and we wanted to keep on increasing our power in that region where we were at. Obviously, I was a person that I would tell the people that I was working with, if you have the opportunity to leave, grab whatever you can and bounce because there's no other way.
Yeah.
And
It does seem like the death thing is inevitable.
Mm.
It's gonna happen. You're gonna die or you're gonna go to jail. That's it. You know.
So you have to be realistic and as well. Like I would always tell them, like I'd rather you tell me, you know what, I want to bounce, than you being a coward and leaving me in a gunfight because then I'll kill myself, you know.
Exactly.
Because coward, treason and cowardness is paid with death. You can't have that type of mentality in your group because that will break the whole system that you have.
You know what's really deep here? So when I'm sitting here listening to your story, you know, if you went onto some people's platforms, yeah, they'll ask him like, "What did you do exactly?" and stuff like that. I don't need to ask him that because I know exactly what he's talking about.
The read between
That's
lights.
you can't even talk about that on camera.
Yeah.
So that's another advice I'll give you. Like, if you ever go on a podcast, don't ever mention
Obviously, like
certain things. But it is crazy that life was there because over here, obviously, there's pressures off the game, isn't it?
Mm.
But that's like literally one wrong move and you're dead.
Yeah. It's like a.
And
It's almost
everyone's trying to kill you.
like a religion.
Yeah.
It's like a religion.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to kill you. The government,
Yeah.
the cartel, your own cartel, the cartel's split in two cartels.
I think that in reality, it's like the gangs in the U.S. I compare this a lot to the gangs in the U.S. because obviously I don't know how gangs in the UK are, but I think in most in most first world countries, sometimes we drown in a cup, while in other places they're swimming in the ocean and Allah doesn't let them drown. And sometimes we ourselves put ourselves into that position where we want to be gangsters,
Exactly,
we want to feel hard,
Yeah.
but in reality, you have all the opportunities to become a good person in society, become a good person, And in other parts of the world, they have to join the cartels because they don't have no food to put in their table,
Here, like you said, a lot in the West, there's a lot of people, they want to be gangsters. They watch the movies and they watch the hip hop, and they want to be a gangster. That's what they want to do, even though they're not in that situation where they need to do that and whatever. But I suppose Mexico is just like in countries like South Africa,
Exactly,
and stuff like that.
Perfect
It's just like you're
example.
born in it.
Yeah.
Now, what else do you really do, and stuff like that? What message would you have? Number one, for kids in Mexico, because I think it's important because you're Mexican, and number two, what would you say to Muslims?
Well, for the kids back in Mexico, obviously, there's another path, Sometimes we make the mistake of following the crowd instead of trying to become someone that is different from the rest. But there is hope, I believe that Islam is the perfect cure for Mexico and itself, and the way that our youngsters are getting pushed to. I believe that it's just a matter of time for Islam to expand to that certain point where it will demonstrate that Mexicans they have more appeal to what Islam is than what to the reality of cartels is, So I say to Mexicans out there that do speak English, because obviously there's a lot of Mexicans that speak English, and that I've interacted with, that there is hope, At the end of the day, there is hope, and it's just in them to ask for guidance, For Muslims, I would say that if you're a Muslim and you grew up in a Muslim family, you are blessed. You are blessed, and you need to recognize that blessing, because a lot of us that were not born in a Muslim family, that come from broken families in that aspect, we would have. I would have loved to be raised by a father and a mother, and with the obviously with the values that an Islamic family has. But alhamdulillah, Allah is the best of planners.
One thing, especially in places like England, 20, 30 years ago, even within the Muslims, there wasn't a lot of knowledge for the kids that were growing up of Islam. Because a lot of the Muslims in the UK are from South Asia, Africa, so they don't know Arabic to understand it. So growing up, there wasn't a lot of Islam or understanding of Islam in their life. But now, 25, 30 years later, now because of translated books, the translations, there's so much, and just the internet in general, there's so much information about Islam, and you're growing up with knowledge basically, and it's easy and stuff like that. And this one thing is important, that with Islam, you've got the blueprint already. You've got the blueprint. Obviously, I was born Muslim, but I never realized I had the blueprint until I was much older. And it was because of prison and stuff like that.
And sometimes like you said, prison, but it's more like Allah's plans
Exactly,
than our
yeah.
plans. Some people ask me, wouldn't you have liked to live in the States and grow up in the States? I wouldn't trade it for anything, because if I wouldn't have lived the way I've lived, I wouldn't have arrived to Islam. And I feel like a lot of Muslims need to feel proud of being Muslims. Like the West has made a certain has made Islam look in a certain way, but in reality, we should be proud of being Muslims. I tell a lot of my friends, I don't consider myself a Mexican anymore. I'm a Muslim at the end of the day.
Muslim first, yeah.
Because what did the Prophet, peace be upon him, say in his last sermon? Patriotism and nationalism are dead corpse, because all they lead to is racism.
Yeah, there's no superior than each other.
Exactly. So, I think it's more like young Muslims need to really look up to the Sahaba, to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to real warriors, you know,
Warriors.
real men, and apply it in our lives. I myself, like I said, I like sports. I like to stay active, and I remember in Christianity, they would tell you can't learn any martial arts because it's the devil's work. You know, you can't learn how to defend yourself. And in
You
reality,
should learn how to defend yourself.
in reality, a Muslim should learn how to defend. Like look in prison. When you're in prison, you have to work out every day because whoever you're rolling with, you have to be ready to defend yourself, to defend the people that you're with. And now I see a lot of Muslims that are lacking in that aspect. You know, that they rather feel superior in knowledge to other Muslims than to actually be calling to Muslims to how do you call it, to become more disciplined in themselves.
Yeah, of course.
As an ummah, you know. Alhamdulillah, bro. It's
Like it's
something.
deep. You know, Islam is like, as I said, when I grew up, I didn't really have a lot of information about it. You know, but even though like we didn't really understand Islam when we were kids, there's things, for example, like you said, you know, being raised a Muslim, like we wouldn't do certain things in front of our parents, like, you know, smoke and stuff like that. You know, they were just instilled in you that respect thing and whatever. And like I said, is now having this knowledge of Islam, like people don't understand how deep, how valuable it is.
Yeah.
It's literally a way of life and a way of, you know, happiness.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? It's very deep, man. So
Yeah, it gave me a lot of peace, and alhamdulillah, like I look back in my life, and sometimes I don't believe where I'm at, you know.
now, mashallah, you know, Allah guided you. That's a clear. If anyone wants to see a sign of guidance, like literally click on a YouTube video, you don't know what you're clicking on.
Yeah.
And that's it. And from there it goes there, you know. It's very deep. But like I said, I never knew until I was in prison one day in what you lot guys call a solitary confinement. We call it the block here. The hole, I think they call it in America. And I was a Muslim, but I didn't know nothing about Islam. And they gave me the Quran because you're allowed a book. And the Quran had an English translation. So I've never read the English translation. That's the first time I read it. And from that moment, I knew this is the truth.
No, yeah, and you know what? The funny thing is that, like you said, maybe with all this advance of technology, of translations and everything, even when I read it in Spanish and I read it in English, alhamdulillah, like I say to myself, like it's like I've read many books of military strategies, The Art of War, 5 Rings, but when you read the Quran, like there's proper knowledge in there, bro. And there's guidance, you know.
You know, it's the Quran is like pure, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So like, if you read that Quran with sincerity, you're gonna feel guilty straight away if you're living opposite to that.
Exactly.
Because you know this is the truth. But sometimes, you know, people's, like you said, people's arrogance gets in the way.
Exactly.
And they don't want to accept, you know. Like some people, they don't want to accept what they're doing is wrong, you know. And that's why they won't accept the truth or whatever. But like I said, you got humble.
Yeah.
Because one day we're gonna go, you know,
Exactly.
and meet our maker. That's the reality of it, you know.
Sometimes this dunya just drags us away from reality, and sometimes we chase glory, we chase legacy, we chase money, and forget that this is temporary.
And you know, like if you look at some of the lives of the companions before Islam, like I said, they were Muslims, but they done stuff they shouldn't have, you know. Some of them were like warriors in the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know?
Some of them were killers.
Yes, they were like warriors in the wrong way, but alhamdulillah, look at even like when they came to Islam, they became the best of human beings, you know. And like people, if you read the biographies of people like Umar bin Khattab, Khalid ibn Walid, and people like that, it shows you, man. But is there anything else you want to add?
No, alhamdulillah, I just appreciate the opportunity of sharing.
Nice, that's an opportunity for me, man. Like obviously, when I spoke to you on the phone, you were in like Mexico, and I was like, bro, this is mad, you know. And whatever the story, just how you became Muslim, like from the suicide to end your life to here now, you know, is unbelievable, you know.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of people if you ever get to that point of suicide, like remember, man, there's always better options than that.
Exactly, and sometimes it's just like
you got to ask God.
It's sometimes just like the remembrance of that there's something higher
course,
than,
higher.
than what we are. Because even ourselves and as human beings, we are capable of amazing things, as well as we are capable of doing
Evil.
evil. We are the same capable of doing good, and we have to understand that our intelligence is a gift given by Allah. That He wants us to understand that after death, there's definitely something there, because like I sometimes think to myself, like, if I die, how do I want to die? When I was in the cartels, I knew that I was going to die like a dog, and that the dogs were going to eat me in the wilderness, because I would see how many people would get killed and just tossed into a cave, bro, made like where their families were never going to find them. And if you know about the Mexican government and the missing cases that they have of so many people missing,
Hundreds of thousands.
They're like, I could have ended up like that, But I think Allah is the best of planners, and there's a purpose.
You know what it was in your story? I noticed from the beginning, like you went to Mexico for a better life because you didn't like the life you were living. So you were kind of always searching for something better, but it's just you're surrounded by evil, though.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? Like that's the problem, innit? You want something better, but you're surrounded by evil. This is why I tell a lot of these youngsters that you got to move away from that crowd. If you can't move away from that crowd, it don't matter how much good you want. Because look, in reality, if you think about it, you got into your Jeep and left, and that was the road to guidance. But you had to get in that Jeep and go. If you didn't do that, because no matter how, I've seen people actually, like sitting down, eating, and drug dealers, like serious, like for English level serious drug dealers, not Mexican level, but English level serious drug dealers. And they're talking about good Islam. They're talking about good things. But then 5 minutes later, when it's done, they're back to you understand? Because it's that company. There's a hadith from the Prophet Sallallahu. The Prophet Muhammad, he said that, like, choose your companion carefully because you're upon the religion of your companion. And he gave also a metaphor that says that if you hang around, so the metaphor from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that if you hang around the person who sells perfume, you're going to get some benefits. And one of them is going to be because you're with him, that perfume smells going to rub off on you because he's a perfume seller. And then the opposite, he gave the example of someone, I don't know if you know this hadith, about someone who's what's it, what they call the people that work with fire and metal?
I know what you're talking about, like a blacksmith type person.
Yeah, so if you, a blacksmith, like what's the benefit? You're going to end up, it's going to end up affecting you, the small. So that was the example of a good friend and a bad friend. The perfume seller being the good friend. So you have to move away from that circle. If you can't move away from that circle, your intentions could be the best.
It's the same even in prison, because you know that in prison there's levels of criminals.
Hierarchy,
and there's people that they keep their circle small, but they have lions with them,
100%.
And there's people that are sheep or worse than sheep. They're pigs, they're just looking to take advantage, and nobody wants them. But if you hang around with the sheep or with the pig, you're gonna learn how they act. But if you hang around with lions, you're gonna act like a lion.
It's a rub off on you, isn't it?
Exactly. So it's the same thing, and this is why a lot of my homeboys and a lot of people that I know, they tell me, like, we always knew you were different in the aspect of how you would think and how you would handle people and how you would keep your circle smaller, because you knew that at the end of the day, when you died, only a few were going to be there. And you were always looking for those specific people that would demonstrate with actions and not with words that they were real, So they understand that what I'm telling them is not just something that I want to sell to them, because I don't get anything in exchange from them, But in reality, I feel the necessity of sharing my story and giving them dawah, because I know that a lot of homeboys, they have good hearts, and a lot of people in prison have good hearts. They're just lost. They just took the wrong decision, and now they're paying the price. But what's better, to be in prison or to be in a grave?
In a grave, exactly.
Where you
can still repent.
Exactly, So alhamdulillah, Allah took me out of a world where He kept me safe, and He gave me that intelligence of keeping my circle small and having values around the people that I was around me, and he showed me that that Islam has the same type of mentality, but in a more elevated conscious.
Anyway, it's deep, man. Actually, man, but this has been a very kind of amazing show, man. I'll be honest with you, I really appreciate you coming down because you came from quite far
Yeah.
and whatever. But Jazakallah khair for coming, man. Is there anything else you want to add on before we go?
No, that's it, bro.
Actually, finally, it's good to meet you finally. When I was speaking to you on the phone, you disappeared for like a year. I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if the bro's okay. Like, did the cartel catch up? I was thinking crazy stuff, but then I heard back from you, so I'm glad, man. You made it out of there. Alhamdulillah, man.
Alhamdulillah, bro.
I hope you enjoyed that, guys. We come to the end of the podcast. It was a really good show. I'll be back soon with some more content. Thanks for tuning in.